Welcome to our regular town board meeting. Today we have a public hearing calendar, an administrative calendar, and then the public comment section. At this time, before we begin, I would like to call on Councilwoman Erin Sweeney to lead us in the pledge.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, please call roll. Here.
Councilman Emerson.
Here.
Councilman Blakeman.
Here.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo.
Here.
Councilman Dunn.
Here.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilman King Sweeney. Receiving taxes, Donald X. Clayton.
First item on the calendar, please.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove the 1.5-story wood frame, one-family dwelling with attached garage and remove all litter and debris from property in East Rockaway.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this matter before the town board? There being none, I'll accept the motion, please.
Supervisor, I move that the public hearing be closed and petition be granted.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Belmore, East Atlantic Beach, Franklin Square, Hewlett, Island Park, Merrick, South Hempstead, and Uniondale.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard before the town board on this matter? There being none, I'll accept the motion, please.
I move that the public hearing be closed and that the local law be adopted.
Is there a second? Call the roll, please.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed local law regarding parking or standing prohibitions in Baldwin, Elmont, Uniondale, Westbury, and Woodmere.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this matter before the town board? Being none, I'll accept the motion, please.
I move that the public hearing be closed and the closed.
Second.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed local law regarding arterial stops in Baldwin, Cedarhurst, Island Park, Levittown, Oceanside, Uniondale, and West Hempstead.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this matter before the town board? There being none, I will accept the motion, please.
Motion for hearing be closed and local law be adopted.
Second.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed local law regarding traffic regulations in the vicinity of schools in Uniondale.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this matter before the town board? There being none, I'll accept the motion, please.
I move that the public hearing be closed and the closed law be adopted.
Second.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed handicap parking on public streets in Atlantic Beach, Baldwin, Elmont, Inwood, Lawrence, Merritt, and Roosevelt.
Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this matter before the town board? There being none, I'll accept the motion,
I
please.
move that the public hearing be closed and that the regulations be adopted.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Castillo. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed lease amendment for use of space on property and water tank in the Levittown Water District in Levittown.
Okay, we have, Donna Casaba.
I didn't see anything. I wrote.
Donna Kazaza, Hempstead, New York. The resolution says that there's a one-time payment to Verizon for its DBA for $269,253.49 and continued annual rent increases. How much are the annual rent increases?
Mr.
Those are not payments to Verizon, those are payments to.
No, I know that. They're payments to who? The town of Hempstead, to the supervisor, correct?
No, to the water department.
Oh, it is to the each
Each individual water district.
Okay, so, great, and it says in that resolution that certain modifications to the communications facilities will be done. Do we know what the,
These are upgrades to the cell towers because of technological advances.
and at whose expense?
Verizon, or the cell, or whatever cell company it is. Not at ours. They are leasing the space from us.
Okay, and where in the town budget, I mean, I just don't see the revenue showing up in each particular district, so we'll just take Levittown. Where is it showing up for the revenue for that district?
Controller Conroy or Commissioner, whichever one.
We have 5 water districts. You have to go to a single page. Oh, wait. It's there.
Yeah, Mr. Conroy, just make your general observations.
There are
sir.
5 water districts. All revenues that are north of those districts are included in the budget and appropriated. In past budgets and in this current budget, we're about to introduce these.
Okay, so you can show me it later on?
I'm sure Controller can show you the exact line where the revenue for this particular item would be in each water district. Very well. Anyone else would like to be heard on this matter? Is there a motion, please?
Make a motion that the hearing be closed and this amendment be adopted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Supervisor Santino,
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino,
Just before I vote, Mr. Conroy? On this item and the 2 following, great revenue for the town, but have you given any thought at all to securitizing these revenues on a going forward basis, maybe taking a lump sum payment on a discounted net present value and assigning out the lease payments? That's currently being looked at, but it's economic sense for certainly the town. Correct. Thank you, Kevin. Aye.
Councilman Blakeman,
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazile, Councilman Dunn,
Aye.
Councilwoman Gooseby, Councilman Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed lease amendment for use of space on property and water tank in the Lido Point Lookout Water District in Point Lookout.
Anyone on this item?
So this, Donna Kazaza, Hempstead, so this particular contract with Verizon is a non-proton. Do we know the reason why we're correcting the prior record?
Mr. Reinhardt?
That's not actually a correction. The existing lease ended last July, and we've been negotiating with Verizon since that time. So this allows the lease to go retroactive to that expiration.
Right, and the next thing, is there a reason why this town board wants to bind itself in a contract through July 3rd, 2036 for Verizon at a dollar amount? We don't even know what the annual increment increases are?
The annual increases are 2% per year for the life of the lease,
And I would,
and they're 5-year increment leases.
and what I would say is 2% might be great now when inflation is low, but if we're 5 or 10 years down the line, why do we want to bind a town board that long to 2036 at a 2%, when at that time you could be getting 10%, or what's the reason for a long-term contract? And excuse me, I apologize. And Verizon is the only one that can get out of the contracts. The town can't. If it's a a bad deal, you're bound until 2036.
Mr. Town Attorney?
The people who negotiate the leases, the supervisor, are, I believe, Bill Miller and Charles Colvin. So if I wanted to, because I did not go negotiate it, so
Mr. Kovic, you want to address us on?
Yes, we got what we consider to be the maximum amount in the national market rate. We're very happy to get that amount. It's a boon for the taxpayers of the district, and we were fortunate to be able to get that amount of money as well as the upfront payment.
And I would respectfully say that it might be a boom now, but, I mean, if you're as old as I, you know that we had those dollar leases in Mitchell Field years ago, the annual leases, so I'm not sure how a great deal today can be a great deal 20 years down the line. I think that term is way too long to bind a board for that consecutive years.
the other thing you have to factor in is there's an upfront payment. You just heard Councilman Ambrosino talk about discounting the money that we're getting from the lease and getting an upfront payment. There is an upfront payment also together with the lease payment, so that has a lot to do with you have to look at the lease as a whole.
I agree, but again, I mean, look, the board can bind themselves, but if you're looking to bind yourself for that many years on a present value, it makes no sense. And the other thing is maybe doing these contracts for so long, 5 years, 5 years, 5 years, maybe that's why this particular contract is a year behind in 2016. Your records don't go out that far. You should have been contracting and negotiating this contract last year before it expired. And it's not the first contract. You guys do it all the time with your fire protection services. Contracts continually expire. And you have
These negotiations sometimes take longer than expected.
Well, I would honestly say if you're going to do these contracts, to do a 2036 contract doesn't make a lot of sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Being none, I'll accept the motion, please.
Supervisor, I move the public hearing be closed and the lease be adopted.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Proposed lease amendment for use of space on property and water tank in the East Meadow Water District in Uniondale.
Is there anyone who'd like to be heard on this matter? Being none, I'll accept the motion, please.
Move that the public hearing be closed and the proposed lease amendment be adopted.
Second.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gooseby. Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Next item, please.
Application of Limestone Property Developments LLC for rezoning from Levittown Plan Residence District to Business District in Wanta.
Good morning. Supervisor Santino, members of the town board, for the applicant, Thomas McKevitt, Son Ward Pastrignano, 333 Earlington Boulevard, Uniondale, New York. Since 2013, my client Allison Hewlin has been operating the Harmony Early Learning Center at 148 Center Lane, Levittown. It's located directly south of Wisdom Lane Middle School and currently has 44 students. As a background, Ms. Hewlin has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Lloyd College in Education, a Master of Arts in Early Childhood Education from Delphi University. She's had experience in daycare for many years and is certified by New York State for Early Childhood Education and Childhood Education. And she also is trained in CPR and First Aid. There's currently a shortage of available daycare in the Levittown area. And even the current Harmony Early Learning site in Levittown has a significant waiting list. So my client for quite some time has been trying to find a site to find an additional center. And due to the requirements of the building zoning ordinance, it is difficult to find a site that's acceptable to the use, not only from a parking perspective, but for also the drop-off requirements that the code requires. So my client has explored and is in contract with this property located at 635 Wantua Avenue in Wantua. We come to this board for rezoning. The property is currently zoned LBRD, and we're looking to rezone to Business X for the purpose of constructing a two-story daycare center at the site. After this, we still have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception for daycare use. The property, actually, I also have photographs of the site for the board to see. The site is currently occupied by a single-family dwelling that was constructed in approximately 1904. My understanding is it has been rented as a unit for some time. The property site has 24,739 square feet. This is a unique property in that it's entirely surrounded by property owned by the town of Hempstead. A portion of it is used as a town playground. To the north of the launch location is O'Shea's Funeral Home. Across the street to the west is a shopping center which contains a law office, pizza parlor, Chinese restaurant, sports bar, nail salon, pharmacy, and some other uses. To the east is Red Maple Drive West, which has a number of single-family residences. And there's also a large buffer which would exist between where this property is and where the residence would be. So it's not as though that this property abuts on residential homes. There's a significant buffer, and then you have Red Maple Drive and then some homes on the east side of Red Maple Drive. If you look at Exhibit 1, actually Exhibit 1, I should hopefully have it, maybe that's Exhibit 2 perhaps. Try Exhibit 3. All right, Exhibit 3. That one works. That is the site plan for the site. Looking again to erect a two-story building, which will have 8,915 square feet. It will have 25 parking spaces on site. It will be surrounded by a fence and landscaping with a small playground in the rear. The only entrance will be on Lontra Avenue. So again, there will be no impact on the residences on Red Maple Lane West. Again, we'll have ingress and egress solely out of Lontra Avenue. Again, we have one way to the south of the site going into the center, which will be a drop-off and pick-up lane, and then there will be another exit for service to the north of the side. There will be an elevator in the building as well, and will comply with all New York State building codes regarding the safety of the premises. We want to try Exhibit 1. Hopefully that is the floor plan. That is the floor plan of the site. The building will have 2 classrooms on the first floor for 8 infants each. There will be 2 classrooms on the first floor for 12 toddlers each. The second floor will have 4 classrooms for children over 3 years of age. One will have 1 for 20 children, 2 for 18 children, and 1 for 16 children. So the building will have a total of 112 children at maximum occupancy, but the building never actually gets to that space. Some children only have a 2-day program, or a 3-day program, or a 5-day program. Again, these kids will have different drop-offs throughout the day. Looking at the logs when children attend, many children get sick. So on any number of days, a handful of children will be sick on a certain day. So even though that will be the capacity, we never see it getting to that site whatsoever. If we go to the third drawing, which have the elevations of the premises, we've tried to make it look as residential as possible. We are very cognizant we are in the Levittown area, and therefore, instead of just having maybe a brick stucco building, we do want to give it as much of a home-like appearance. It's also inviting to the parents as well, that they are indeed going to a home-like setting where the children will be safe all day long, and I think it just gives it a nice aesthetic appearance to the children as well, and to the neighborhood as well. The age of the children at the center will be from 8 weeks to 5 years of age. The hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. But there's an early drop-off option available from 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. and a late pickup option available from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We may occasionally on the weekends want to do like a mom-evening program and some small educational programs. Again, it wouldn't be constant, it wouldn't be anywhere near the amount of traffic, but we do informal programs for the students and parents of the schools from time to time. We also have an 8-week summer program in July and August, which operates very similar to the program throughout the rest of the year, again, having an educational program, but essentially being a daycare for working parents throughout the summer so the children can be there throughout the day. The plans for the site have already been reviewed by the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. The agency licenses daycares, and they cannot actually give a permit till the physical facility is actually constructed. But just keep in mind that these facilities are very highly regulated by the state of New York. They have surprise inspections very frequently. Those reports that inspections are on the New York State website as far as concerned. And my client runs a very good daycare, and she's very proud of it, and again, looking to expand that into the Levittown area. We again want to go just the site plan once again. The building zone ordinance requires 25 parking spaces. one for each of the 17 employees will have in the site, as well as one space for every 15 students. We will be providing these 25 spaces, so no parking variance will be required whatsoever. We're going to make sure that all the parking is contained on site, and we design the site to make sure that will be the case. So even if they're all 17 spaces that are used by all the employees at once, there will be 8 of those spaces available to the parents who don't use their children. And in addition, when you look at the drop-off lane, that drop-off lane can probably stack another 3 cars in addition. So you could probably go and have 11 cars laying on site. And when you hear the traffic testimony, we don't think there'll ever be a time where there will be that many cars on the site. Again, it's not as though it's like a regular school where there's dismissal at 3:15 and you have 200 parents at one time. It's a very gradual drop-off and very gradual pickup. So even though there will be the school, whatever hours from 9 to 4, many parents who are teachers will come pick up their children at 3:15. And again, speaking to my client, she said she's never actually had a parking issue. 3 to 4 years she's earned on the current location. And keep in mind, the current location is right next to Wisdom Lane Middle School and directly across from residences. So we think that from a planning perspective, this is actually an excellent site and will be a benefit to the Levittown community. With me today, I have Wayne Muller from RMS Engineering, who will be testifying on behalf of the traffic and parking issues. Mr. Muller has testified before this board on many occasions as an expert witness, and as the supervisor once again recognized as an expert in traffic engineering.
Objection, so ordered.
Muller.
Good morning, Supervisor Santino, members of the board. Mr. McKenna indicated my name is Wayne Muller. I'm with the firm of RMS Engineering. We prepared a brief analysis regarding the proposed changes on before the board today, which I'd like to submit copies as part of the record. As indicated on the plans prepared by Michael McInerney, architect, and as fully described by Mr. McKevett, it is proposed to construct a 2-story daycare facility on the subject property. In accordance with the town zoning ordinance, section 319, the property requires 25 parking spaces, and we are providing 25 parking spaces. We are not seeking a parking variance as part of this application. As indicated on the plans, access to the property will be via 2 proposed curb cuts. The southerly curb cut will function as the entrance to the proposed pickup and drop-off lane that is required by the ordinance, and the northerly curb cut will primarily serve as the entrance and exit to the proposed parking area, which is located to the north and the east of the building that is proposed to be constructed on the property. To determine the level of activity that we would anticipate to be generated by this facility, we actually observed the activity during the morning drop-off and afternoon pickup times at the existing Harmony Learning Center, which is located on Central Lane in Levittown. Based on our observations during those time frames, it is my opinion and the opinion of my firm that there will be more than sufficient parking provided on the property to accommodate both the staff and the parents that are coming in to drop off and pick up the children, in so much as that we provide a queuing lane on the premises that provides a total of approximately 6 vehicles that could queue up next to one another, as well as 25 parking spaces. The parents are typically there for a very brief period of time. They come in, they drop off their child, and they go into the facility, they come back to their car and they leave. So the turnover in parking as it relates to parental pickup and drop off is very quick. The parents are in, they're out, they don't dwell, and they don't linger at the facility. We also performed an analysis to determine how the driveway would operate during the peak times, that be the morning arrival and the afternoon dismissal times. And as indicated in my report, we found that the driveway would operate at an acceptable level of service using modeling techniques that are recognized standards and that have been presented before this board in the past. So therefore, based on our analysis of the proposed change of zones to allow the daycare center and our observations at the existing facility located about 2 miles to the west in Levittown, it is my professional opinion that the granting of the change of zone to permit the daycare facility will not create an undue traffic congestion hazard, and that there will be more than adequate parking provided on the property to satisfy the demand. Thank you.
Again, again, just to conclude our presentation, again, we feel that the current location is an asset to the community. Again, my client runs a very clean and very upstanding educational environment. We're going to show any board member who wants to see the type of operation she runs, and looking just to go and provide an additional service to the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from any members of the town board for Mr. McKevitt?
No question, just,
Councilman Dunn first, please.
Yeah, this is gonna be, it can be used as adult daycare also, in addition to the children, right?
My client is in the business of doing child daycare. That's where licenses are. That's what she get. Again, even to get to this stage, she go through a lot of state review, state pre-approval to get to this point. That's her intention. That's what she does, and that's what we're intending to do with the site.
Second question, last question. I don't notice, maybe it's here, and I'm not seeing it, flagpole.
Yeah, we will install a flagpole on the site. There's actually a current one at our current site, and we're very happy to provide a flagpole with an American flag at this site as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Blake.
yeah, I hope my colleague was not suggesting that one of us needed adult daycare up here on the board. I just wanted to make a blanket statement, not germane to this particular application, but in general, townwide. I think that the town board should do everything possible to try and facilitate single parents and homes where both parents are working, that they have a place for safe and nurturing daycare for their children. I think it's incredibly important that we try to support more daycare so more people have the opportunity to work if they so choose, and knowing that their children will be in a safe environment. So I look favorably on most of these applications from my point of view.
Are there any members of the audience who would like to address the town board on this application? Thank you very much, Mr. McKevitt. There being none now, I will accept the motion.
Motion to hearing be closed, and the application be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman D'Esposito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Boothby. Councilman King Sweeney.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. McKevitt.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, call the administrative calendar, please.
Supervisor, on the administrative calendar, we have items from 1 through 27.
Okay, does any member of the board wish to sever any item on the administrative calendar? There being none, I will then accept a motion on the administrative calendar.
Supervisor, I move the administrative calendar in its entirety.
Is there a second? Okay. We have one individual who has signed in on various administrative calendar items, Rory Gordon. Ms. Gordon. Name and address for the record, please.
Rory Gordon, Hopog, New York. Number 5, I've brought this up several times, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Open Nassau. I put a poll up there asking what the preference would be of the people that live in Nassau County for town board meetings. Would they prefer A, daytime meetings, B, evening meetings, C, evening meetings with a few daytime, and D, daytime meetings with a few evening meetings? And by far, it was only up for 2 days. Everybody wants evening meetings. It makes it impossible for people that work during the day to come here. I have the luxury of going to business, so I make my own schedule. Is there any particular reason, I mean, North Hempstead does it, is there any particular reason why you folks don't do it, to make it more convenient for the residents?
Well, we have meetings both in the evening and during the day, and the attendance is essentially the same.
You have 4 meetings at night. That's it. And I think one of the 4 is when you have your inauguration deal.
That's not correct.
You have 4 meetings on the calendar.
What you just said is not correct in terms of the installation.
Okay, that's not in the evening?
No, it's during the day.
Okay. All right, so 4 out of how many meetings? 28?
22.
How many meetings? 26. You don't want to make it convenient for the constituents. Everything you do, Mr. Santino, you don't make it convenient for the constituents. I find it very disheartening.
Well, can we consider adding some night meetings? I mean, seems like there's a lot of nights that would be available.
That's great.
It has been this way for several town supervisors before me, and the experience has been that the attendance does not differ between day and night. There is no appreciable difference in terms of people attending at night, attending in the day.
You're not open for any change. You want to stay in 1970.
We will certainly take it under advisement, but at the moment, it seems to work the way we do it.
Well, I've received a lot of requests from constituents to have night meetings, so can we just add maybe 1 or 2 this year and see how it works out?
The proposal before us is for the calendar for the year has been worked out, and that's the proposal on the calendar now.
Could we amend the proposal, just add 1 or 2? I mean, just 1 or 2 out of over 20, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Certainly free to, at a later date, introduce that if you wish.
What do you mean a later date? You're voting on it today.
Calendar is set. The dates are picked in terms of,
So are you telling me I have to wait until next year?
no. If a member wanted to add a meeting or change something, they could make a motion for that at a subsequent time.
Could I do a motion now?
The moment, you can, Mr. Town Attorney? Right. The question is, a member of the board is interested in amending the item number 5 on the administrative calendar relative to the setting of town board meeting date for the year 2018. So the question is, what would be the procedure if a member of the board wanted to do that?
They can offer that as an amendment to the resolution now.
I can do that now?
Correct.
What do I need to do to accomplish that?
Offer your amendment.
So I would offer an amendment to add 3 additional nightly meetings.
And you'd have to tell us when you want to. Because this is setting the schedule. This
Okay.
resolution sets the schedule.
Okay. Just get the calendar out.
The other issue I think you might have is availability of the pavilion and on certain dates and overtime. Those are two issues.
If the councilwoman will withdraw her motion, I would like to make a motion that we sever and adjourn this item for the town board to review and additional meetings. And then we consider that at a later date. It doesn't have to be set today, does it, Mr. Town Attorney?
No, it does not.
Okay, so why don't we adjourn it and see if we can add a few more night meetings, because basically the numbers don't really change that much, but they're different people. Some people can't come during the day, they can come at night, and we should try to accommodate them a little more. Would that be acceptable, Councilwoman?
Great idea.
I second the motion. That's great.
We need a motion.
Senior councilwoman wants to speak.
You are wrong as far as the seconds. These meetings, you did not have night meetings until I became a member of this board. Okay, so that's when.
Soapbox
we did
starts.
that, because,
Soapbox.
I wanted people from within my district, they may not be able to come. But so far, many of them are not. And it's up to the board to but I just want you to know, this has not been this way since the 70s. We had meetings. Once I became town member of this board, and.
So what's your point?
Well, congratulations. Thank you. That was wonderful.
So, surely, Senior Councilwoman, you would not be opposed to us severing and adjourning this item to consider more night meetings?
I don't, you can't tell me, I'll do whatever it is I wish to do.
I'm asking.
So When her name is called to vote, Councilman, then she'll.
Okay.
Not clear.
Okay, let me just understand where we are, Mr. Town Attorney, by your understanding, we have a motion to...
We have a motion by Councilman
to adjourn this matter today?
Correct. That's what we have on the table, a motion.
So, and we have a second? So then this would be to table this item. So you would have to call the roll, starting with me, right?
Supervisor Santino.
Okay, I believe that the schedule and Councilwoman Gooseby is 100% correct. When she became a member of this town board in the year 1999, night town board meetings were introduced on essentially the same frequency that was carried through since then. I commend the senior councilwoman for her input at that time, and the concept was to give individuals the opportunity to come, those who wanted to come could come in the evenings, those who could come at night, and it's really, other than the senior councilwoman, the one member who has been on this board since that time, essentially the experience to me has been that the same number of people come during the day as come during the evening. There are other considerations in terms of overtime to bring people in who work here for evening hours and things of that nature. And again, to me, there has been no appreciable change in terms of who comes at night and who comes in the day. Therefore, I stand by the schedule as drafted, and I vote no on the amendment.
Councilman Emerson.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
No.
Councilman Dunn.
No.
Councilwoman Gooseby.
I abstain.
Councilman King Sweeney.
I think it's always good to be forward thinking and take a fresh look at things. Since I've been on the town board for about 2.5 years, I have received a lot of requests from constituents to have more nightly meetings, and being here, most meetings people make that same request. And when you have 4 out of 23 meetings that are in the evening, it seems to me, why not just give it a shot, see if it works? I fully support this, so yes.
Okay, vote being 3-3, the town attorney advises me that the motion for the amendment fails, so therefore please, well, now we are obviously moving on to other things because we were in the middle of public comment. So on the next subject, Ms. Gordon, that you want to speak about.
Number 12, could you explain to me? I didn't understand.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Ms. Town Attorney, want to go into the details of number 12, which is referencing the sighting of automatic teller machines in various town facilities.
That's exactly correct, Mr. Supervisor, and there were 3 bidders, and the bid of Dover Gourmet Corporation was deemed to be the bid that would give the town the most money.
Excuse me, Supervisor.
Yes.
I cannot hear because these 2 gentlemen are having that sidebar. I wish they would go someplace else. I've asked you how to stop me. You've been very nasty to me. I don't appreciate it.
Okay, let's, if members of the board wish to speak amongst themselves, if they can do it in the softer voice as possible so they're not heard, or go off to the side room to conduct their private discussions. I think the senior councilwoman is 100% right. It does get a little confusing to try to follow what's being said by the speaker or the town attorney when there are conversations going on. So, that was your explanation, right? Okay. And then this, go ahead.
There were 3 bids, and this is the one that gives the town the most fees for the service.
And the reason we're doing it is because we found that there are various locations where people who visit these buildings, residents, or other facilities want to use cash. We've had an ATM machine outside the cafeteria here for some time because there are vending machines there, and the cafeteria, which is run by an outside vendor, doesn't take credit cards. So if someone wants to go in and buy a cup of coffee, if they found they inadvertently left without any money, there is an ATM ATM machine so they could avail themselves of it. Similarly, we're going to be installing one at the golf course, which we now operate in Lido for the same reason. I believe another place we're going to put them is in the town, near the town clerk's office. Because again, people go in there and pay various fees, licensing and things of that nature. It's essentially a convenience for the residents, but there is a revenue stream for the town and ultimately for the taxpayers.
Where's the third location? You said golf course, town clerk's office.
Do we have?
Well, I don't think the locations have all been set yet because we're just entering into the contract. So there will be, as time goes on and we see needs at various town locations, we'll be having them installed.
The golf course, is it inside or is it outside the ATM?
It's inside.
Or you don't know?
It's inside. It will be
Shake
inside.
his head,
My answer is, I don't know.
My understanding is it will be inside.
Okay,
So if someone goes there and wants to buy a Coke at the snack bar and they're left without any money, they can buy a Coke.
Okay.
What?
Who takes the cash out of the machine? The company does? Is that how it works?
Correct.
Okay, and what happens if the machine gets broken into? Do they have insurance for it?
I would think they could either be self-insured or they would carry insurance.
Well, you should.
Most companies do carry insurance. I'm going to get told right now by the man who negotiated the. Which makes sense. I'm just told they don't take money out of the machine. People take money out of the machine. The vendor puts money into the machine. Going back to your insurance question, it can be either one, but the vendor is responsible.
Okay, on number 13, can you explain that to me a little more specifically? You have, you're accepting bids or something?
Commissioner Tooman, this is the Department of Engineering, it's the requirements contract for work along various roadways within the unincorporated areas of the town of Hempstead. Commissioner Tooman or Deputy Commissioner Tierney, over here. This is Commissioner Tooman from the Department of Engineering.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you wanted.
It's
For requirements work. So it's
Just explain that in layman's terms.
sure. So it's road projects that are done in piecemeal, like small road projects.
So does that mean some of the residents are getting new roads, the roads fixed? What does that specifically mean?
These are smaller repairs, so patches and things of that nature.
Okay, and Mr. Blakeman and Ms. Sweeney, did you get enough information about the bids on this particular one? Did you have any concern?
I don't have any details on the bids. I think that was the consensus in my office on number 13.
Is that because you don't get them? Or you have
I mean,
to?
it's all public and I
There's not
speak
that
with.
many details on it, I know that.
I know I'm in constant communication with your office, so I don't know why you guys wouldn't have the details.
And like, where is this posted to get this bid? Like, how do you?
Posted on the town's website.
Okay, I'm good, thank you. Number 14? Number 14?
But by the way, just so you know, all of the resolution which I have in front of me has all the information on it. It has the various companies that bid, the amount of money that they bid. It is all right here on the resolution that is provided to, that is in the packet that we all have. So it's right here. There were four companies that bid and the amount that they bid.
I think it's just the names and the costs, not the qualifications or the substance of the bids.
Go ahead, the next item.
Well, how come she just says the name and the cost and not the substance of the bid? Need that?
Or the qualifications of the bidders, I don't know. Am I missing something?
I don't know. I think it should be more.
I'm not understanding what the exact.
The actual bid, the resolution lists the four companies
Right.
that bid. amount of money that they bid. So the question is the qualifications of.
Yeah, my department reviews all the qualifications and we make a recommendation to award. And then ultimately, obviously, it's up to the town board to decide if they do so. And we're more than happy to communicate with any of the town board members along the way.
Okay, so maybe going forward, we could have some monthly meetings. Maybe the supervisor could attend a meeting as well, and we can all get together and talk.
Any board member could come to your office, ask your office about any bid that they have a question about, and see all the background and all of the questions that they may particularly have.
Would you like to join us in that meeting?
Well, we'll certainly see, depending upon when those meetings
I remember getting on your calendar the last year, so I was just wondering if maybe we could all sort of, since we're all here as friends, maybe we could figure out a time and date we could meet.
Absolutely. Ms. Gordon, you want any other question on any other?
Actually, maybe you guys can put it on your calendar right now.
Ms. Gordon, I will run the meeting. Do you have anything on any of the matter before us here? That's not on us, that's not on this calendar. Do you have anything, did we answer your questions about number 13?
Yeah, number 13's good. Why do you have such an attitude, Mr. Santino? I don't understand it. It's terrible. You're a public servant, we pay you, you treat us like shit.
Do you have another, please watch your language.
Excuse me. Well,
Do you have another?
yeah,
item
number
on the
14. Number 14.
Okay.
There's one contract here for the mainframe server and the disaster recovery box. Does that cover the BDMS files?
The commissioners.
Commissioner Prim? Good morning.
Okay, so you have another contract for that? What happens, if, God forbid, that goes down? Who's responsible for that? Okay, so we have another contract for that?
Yes.
Okay, how many contracts do we have for all the technical things at the town of Hempstead? We have all these different servers and all this different stuff.
Commissioner Prim, is that something you have off the top of your head, or you can supply it to Ms. Gordon later on? So why don't you give her your phone number, and you can look up her information that she's asking for and give it to her.
Okay, well, how many different servers are there for the information at the town of Hempstead? You are the head guy, you should know that, that's your job.
We have a couple of hundred servers.
We have a couple hundred servers. Okay, and they're all protected somehow, and they're all protected by different companies.
Pretty much.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Mr. Tennant, I have a follow-up question for you about number 12. Can town employees with credit union accounts use these ATM machines without a fee? Town employees who have credit union accounts, can they use these ATMs without a fee? Unless I'm mistaken, I think such members of the credit union can go to CVS and use their ATMs without a fee.
The credit union, which is not affiliated with the town of Hempstead, makes its own contracts with various providers of ATMs. So that would be between the credit union and the provider.
Could we figure out a similar type of contract though to help out the town employees?
But once again, that's not, it will be, you can ask the credit union to do that, but it's not, while it's called the town of Hempstead Credit Union, it's not run by the town of Hempstead.
Right.
So,
Ask for them to help out with this ATM situation? I'm just trying to figure out a way to avoid
you can certainly petition or write a letter to the credit union asking.
Try to figure out a scenario that we would have transactions without fees?
I don't know the answer to that question.
And of course, the vast majority of the town employees can walk to the other building where the credit union office is and withdraw anything they want without a fee. So that worked out. Okay, any other questions, Ms. Gordon?
Well, I guess it's fair to say since the last meeting, you guys haven't kissed and made up and we're still in the same position. Is Is that,
Is there anything on this, is there anything on the administrative calendar that you want to?
well, we touched on it, so.
Anything else on any specific
The
item?
reason you don't want to tell us why
Any
you're not meeting?
specific item on the administrative calendar?
No.
Thank you very much. Okay, would you please, there's no one else on the administrative calendar that signed in, so please call the roll.
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Edwards.
Not on the administrative calendar unless I'm mistaken, you signed in on this Lynn.
I didn't have time to fill out all of this. I has to digest.
I'm sorry, Mrs. I don't go by what's put in front of me.
Not a
You are-
problem. And so
you are-
now I'm going to put myself in front of you. You can address
Yes.
these issues.
Okay. On which administrative calendar item are we talking about?
I want to follow proper protocol. My name is Nita J. Gallaudet, and I live in Baltimore.
Thank you.
Good morning, one and all. Okay, where do we begin? Item number
Great.
Actually, I can incorporate 3 and 4, so whatever respective commissioner who might need to address this, feel free to come up, have a seat. My concern has to do with some of the names of these vendors being rather consistent. It's almost like you can pull out one particular contract and just drop it in. And I still ask, where is the documentation, the benchmarking, the matrix that are established to address how the outreach is not only done, but the effectiveness of it, the results of it as it pertains to the inclusion of service disabled, veteran-owned, and minority and women businesses. That does not seem to exist in the town of Hempstead.
Mr. Town Attorney would go over our processes.
Items number 3 and 4 are number 3 is a bid. The company who does the board for us is one town bid. We advertise in accordance with state law, and whoever will be waived to by the building commissioner. Am I saying something wrong, Mr. Commissioner?
Don't wait, come on down and speak, because the few of us have become more.
In any event, that's a bid, and we advertise
I
in
understand that.
connection with town.
Get it straight before it gets on the record.
And so we advertise as provided by town law. And any
Town law,
business,
state law, because town law is different. I don't know what the law is for the town as it pertains to
The town law.
well, the town law is a state statute.
Okay, but the state has issued, they have initiated things above and beyond what's on paper. The reason I know that, with all due respect, Mr. Ron, is that I helped to establish some of the requirements that are directly or indirectly infused into state law as it pertains to diverse business outreach. And I know for a fact that the town of Hempstead does not follow the law in its true essence. You can tell me till the cows come home or till my time is up that you follow the law, but you cannot tell me that you continue to use the same company and not institute any type of additional outreach that will lessen the monopoly that takes place in the town of Hempstead. You can't tell me that.
We accept below bid.
And how many bids were actually submitted? One?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Again, whoever can answer that question, because I am taking up my time to have to do work to pay for the taxes in this town and this county, where we pay the second highest taxes in the country, to have my questions answered.
Ms. Meredith, would it satisfy you if we were able to disclose the amount of political contributions that these people made?
Yes.
It definitely would, because I'm hoping that, our media representatives from Newsday could actually highlight the specifics of these meetings as opposed to some.
The immediate question was how many companies bid on number 3. So that would be Commissioner Rockman. You want to come forward and...
It should be in the packet.
Commissioner?
Good morning, Supervisor.
Good morning.
This contract was put out in 2014. and it's been in effect since January 1st, 2015, and goes until December 31st, 2019. There were several bidders. I don't know the exact number off my head because it was 3 years ago, but I can get that information.
We can get that to Ms. Meredith. So there were several companies that bid on it. This was the lowest responsible bidder. It is a five-year contract, and it expires in 19.
That is correct.
But you will please give that information to Ms. Meredith so she can see all the different companies that bid.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, Ms. Meredith?
Yes, because again, the statement, the way it reads here is ratifying and confirming emergency posed by threat of imminent danger and authorizing special assessment. Okay, so you confirmed the emergency threat from 2014?
The company that won the bid
Right.
was called
You
upon, the
extended.
company who won the bid was called upon to do this work.
Right. So you extended an existing bid.
No. It's a bid that's good for 5 years. The companies get selected to do this work for the period of 5 years.
I understand that, but because you can't determine, none of us, even though some people may think they are imminent, none of us know what the emergencies will entail to determine what the amount of that bid would be, which would require some type of change orders.
No.
So you have a set number as far as the
We're not going to actually try to answer your question.
Well, I appreciate that.
The bid is based on certain hourly rate, things of that nature that doesn't change. I mean, it's not the nature of the emergency, it's done by the amount of work and things of that nature, correct?
Correct. When the bid is put out, it's broken down into different things that has to be done. To remove an above-ground pool is a cost. To board up a 2x12 window, 4x8 door, to sheathe. So everything is broken down on a line item bid. So what ratifying and confirming means is that the work was done because it was an emergency, and now it's going for the town board to approve the payment of it. That's what ratifying and confirming means. Because again, this contract's been in place, it's a 5-year contract, so there's no extras. It's basically, you're not, when the code enforcement officer goes to the scene, he will tell the board of company what he wants done, and that window, that door, so we know what that price is at that point, it needs to be closed up, then they send us the bill.
Okay, so in the bid itself in 2014, was there language that was inclusive of specific outreach and inclusion as the general contractor to be inclusive of service disabled, veteran-owned, minority and women-owned businesses in 2014?
Town of Hempstead is not allowed to grant preferences.
That's not preference, that's outreach. That's what I'm saying to you earlier, that the state refers to its outreach as it pertains indirectly to the inclusion and making every effort to be inclusive of diverse businesses. That's not preference. That's opportunity. Okay, I'm finished on that subject.
Well, can't we figure out a way to reach out to more diverse groups? I mean, whether or not we're...
As the state and the federal government mandates, and we get state and federal funding with specific objectives attached to it that this town is consistently in violation of. Not that this conversation will get a news set. I'm just saying, this is specific to those issues that I bring to this table on a regular basis, and I get crickets or snowflakes, or I get disrespected, but I'm okay with that.
I'm not. So how about we start having that conversation, how we can reach out to more diverse groups?
Crickets, just like I said.
I mean, can we set up an action plan?
It's a publishing issue. It's an issue of where does the town board want to have. We advertise in accordance with state law, request the fact that there are bids, that we are accepting bids for whatever work there is, and we advertise in the state law. Any group is allowed to put in a bid.
But we have a pretty healthy mailing budget. It seems to me we could allocate some of that money
Right,
to greater outreach.
down on a lot of the photographs that get taken and do some actual outreach so that we can promote businesses that are owned. Small businesses are the backbone of the United States of America. You know, we're a part of that group.
If I could just ask a question. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby, didn't you host an event months ago targeting women and minority-owned businesses and helping them explain to them how the bidding process goes?
advertised throughout the community as well as the newspaper.
And how many businesses,
Oh, we had quite.
how many, with all due respect, Senior Councilwoman Hughes, I really would like to be able to finish my question, so that we're all on the same, so
What happened?
she's on my time, so let's ramp it up again. With all due respect, I have, one, your mic is not on. Two, with all due respect, and you always seem to request respect and you want people talking and having sidebar conversations. So with all due respect, I would like to be able to finish the question, because if you are my mind reader, then there's a lot of things I don't need to be at. So, as I was going to say, with all due respect for these many sundry types of events and activities, from that meeting, one, how many contractors, how many diverse business contractors are currently doing business with the town of Hempstead? And Councilman D'Esposito, I have done those types of events in the town of Hempstead, in the county of Nassau, in the state of New York, in the United States of America, and its external properties in the Caribbean. So I am an authority in this area. So I don't understand what the sidebar question was to put something on the record that would put me on the spot. But it did, just so we're clear, just so we're clear, I'm sure that was probably in the multi-million-dollar mailing campaign, but the fact that we can't follow...
Actually, Ms. Meredith, I have a good idea. Since I'm no longer included in the town mailings, perhaps I could use my town, it is true, my town budget for my district, and maybe we could figure out a joint program on how we can reach out to more diverse companies with my mailing budget.
Okay, Ms. Meredith.
May I answer the councilwoman? I did invite you. Anytime I have anything, I invite all council members, as well as all of the various people who are important. And you were important, but you did not attend.
It's possible you invited me. I'm not questioning that you did, and I don't know if I had another event at the same time that was scheduled. I think it was wonderful that you had that event.
Ms. Meredith, we've allowed you to go well over time, so we're going to move on now to the next.
But I haven't yet finished that.
Well,
I haven't finished that, so...
Do you have another item to speak about?
I sure do.
Okay.
Before Ms. Meredith speaks on the item, I'd like to move that at the next meeting, we get a printout from various departments on whether or not we achieve the targets that we had for veterans, veteran-owned businesses, veteran-employed businesses, and minority and women-owned businesses, so that we can see exactly where we stack up with respect to those contracts.
Ms. First of all, that's not on the calendar, so it's not, I don't believe, unless the town attorney corrects me, it's in order. But we would be more than happy to put together a compendium of the various minority-owned and veteran veteran-involved businesses that we do business with. I can't imagine that's going to be ready in 2 weeks, but we will certainly. It is certainly something that I will direct all my commissioners to assemble.
Actually, getting back to Councilman Blakeman's idea, is that not possible from a procedural perspective?
Right, there's no resolution on the calendar, but the supervisor just said he was going to make that happen. I would also agree with the supervisor that 2 weeks is not enough time to do that.
Ms. Meredith, do you have another item on the agenda?
I do.
So let's move forward to it. All right, let's move forward to it. Let's try to move forward to it.
Number 16. Amending resolution number 38-2017, since I don't have the staffing or the technology to be able to ramp all this up, and since the town attorney does have staff and everybody else, except maybe 2 of the council people get the information, what exactly is 38-2017 that we're amending as it pertains to these various office positions?
Mr. Senator?
Yes.
The resolution 3817 is the blanket resolution establishing all the positions and salaries in the town of Hempstead for calendar year 2017. From time to time, people leave, people get rehired, people pass civil service exams and get promoted on the list, and that's what this resolution does.
Okay. Or the new positions that we find out about, or when people get raises when they come from other municipalities and they come to work here, they seem to get at least a 25% markup on their salary. So when do we find out about these types of, again, if this is opportunities that could increase the diversity in the town of Hempstead that is severely lacking, how would one find that out?
Well, this is all online. All those positions are posted on the town website.
Okay. I just find it interesting that you post things online, you send to the website, but then you say the things you want the public to know that you spend the millions of dollars on are more of the fluff things. I would think that residents who are struggling to live here, consistent with the list that I get every time I come here of the abandoned buildings or something that's going to get torn down or ripped out in my neighborhood, that would be the type of information that you could use the millions of dollars on in these advertisements.
Ms. Meredith, again, now that's, anything else that's actually on the administrative calendar?
Indirectly, when they...
No, directly on the administrative calendar.
Directly. Number 10, ratifying and confirming the granting of application to display fireworks conducted by Paramount Television, whatever. Where are these fireworks going to take place, and how are the residents in those local areas notified, particularly when we have we get a number of complaints for us in the Baldwin, South Shore area when these various fireworks displays take place. You have senior citizens who goes with animals who get very concerned, very frustrated. 4th of July seems to be going on at least every weekend around here between all of these fireworks and displays. So I'm just curious as to how this goes about and when we can address this increasing noise pollution.
Well, generally speaking, these firework shows, not this one in particular, but generally speaking, firework shows are put on by chambers of commerce, different churches or synagogues or things of that nature, festivals, feasts, things of that nature, and they have to get a permit from the town if it in any way impacts town, any area within the town, to hold the fireworks. So this happens all the time. It obviously happens more in conjunction with Memorial Day, the 4th of July, sometimes Labor Day, things of that nature. There might be other very special occasions, a significant anniversary for a church or for, as I said, a chamber of commerce, some other community group where those things happen. So that's generally what these are about. This one, I believe, subject to check, I believe the one in front of us, also with respect to, we find, and we're very pleased that more and more, whether it's movie companies or television companies, are choosing locations within the town of Hempstead to stage some of their productions. We derive a fee for that, which again goes to help offset the cost of town government and helps taxpayers. So we're finding more and more of that happening. We negotiate the fee with the various company, and I would, again, subject to check. This one, because I'm aware of, and I'm not 100, there were two fairly well-known, and the names are going to escape me, Emma Stone and someone else, who were in a movie that was filmed, a couple of scenes were filmed partially on Atlantic Avenue in Oceanside, and this is in conjunction with that.
Okay, so you mentioned that these types of things that you are excited about because it's going to bring down the cost. So can we expect a decrease in taxes this year since we're so warm and fuzzy?
One, two, or three of these, I mean, it is a revenue stream that goes into offset our costs and offset the amount of money we have to raise in taxes, yes. That goes to offset.
So possibly we might see a decrease in taxes.
It's one part of a big puzzle.
Yeah, but unfortunately we're paying a big price for the big puzzle, and our pieces are much smaller than the salaries that before
Any other
the last
questions
thing.
on the council?
Yes, number 8, accepting sponsorship for support of senior citizens programs. I'm all for senior enrichment. I just have a problem with, it just seems to be that a lot of these activities for seniors are not widespread throughout the township. So it makes for lack of accessibility, again, lack of diversity. And I have yet to see, unless I missed it somewhere, and feel free to correct me, anything that pertains to any additional programs or services for our veterans outside of.
Let me just first of all, and then your time has
Then I'm done.
expired. We have senior citizen centers that are active in Roseville, Uniondale, Hempstead. We run programs in that are centered at the Summer Beach program, which is in Lido Beach, that welcome seniors from all over the township. We just had a very successful matinee movie night that there were several hundred seniors from all over the town of Hempstead who were there at it. So, you know.
You do realize you folks have to pay for parking to get to Lido Beach and they have to get there as well?
No, they do not, because we actually provide bus service from the local senior center. So a senior who wants to participate in that program can go to their local center in Uniondale or Hempstead.
All of our seniors are not necessarily in a senior center yet,
but they can go to the senior center in their local community and get on the bus, and we take them right down to the program.
Okay, do they know that?
And we also, what's that?
Do they know that?
Yes, we absolutely make it well known to them. And we also provide every senior in the town with a parking pass. So if they choose to drive themselves to the program at Lido Beach, they have a parking pass where they can park for free.
Okay. Well, I hope that you can promote that in the next one of your mailings, because trust me, there are quite a few seniors that are still not aware of that. But it still doesn't speak to the lack of developed programs for our veterans of all age groups.
Okay.
If I can get that information, because I've requested other things from this board, and I was assured I would get it after the fact, and I don't receive it. So
Okay, the next speaker on the administrative calendar is Mary Ellen Craig.
And it's always a pleasure, Supervisor Santino, always.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Mary Ellen Cray, 436 Locust Avenue, Uniondale.
Good morning.
I'm just questioning where that is in Uniondale, please.
Where's what now? Which one?
This is online.
18.
I put it online.
Well, it's the public hearing, it's calling the public hearing on October the 13th. Mr. Reed here? Yeah, where the Uniondale matter, can we just tell Mr. Craig where that is?
Uniondale, due to the new development of several buildings by Oxford University, and they had multiple driveway aprons, and we are implementing no stopping at the time across the aprons to keep cars from blocking driveways.
And hopefully that will help prevent the semis from parking in that area also. Difficult situation for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Okay, on the administrative calendar, Diane Madden.
Diane.
Diane Madden, Hempstead. I had a question on 16. Could someone please explain that again? Because I think it definitely relates to the Hempstead shelter. I have a question.
Mr. Rob?
Resolution 38-2017 is the adoption of the titles and salaries for the year 2017 in the town of Hempstead. The resolution amending that is for changes that occur during the past month or so, with people retiring, people leaving, people going on leave, people getting appointed from civil service lists, things of that nature. That's what that resolution is.
Anything specific to the animal shelter?
I don't know, it's posted online. I don't believe there was anything from the animal shelter.
And does this pertain to part-time employees? Because there's a lot of shuffling at the animal shelter from building, sanitation, just about when the staff train, staff that Santino keeps transferring in, he transfers them out. It doesn't seem, I can't find these transfers anywhere.
That would not be a part of this resolution.
So the part-time people are shuffled all over the town, and it's never recorded
Well,
anywhere.
considering department needs, part-timers will sometimes move from place to place, consider taking into account their specific titles.
Okay, where is it recorded?
It does not come, those inter-office or intra-office things do not come before the board.
Because you have the hardest workers of the town being shuffled all over the place. Where can employees, Councilwoman Sweeney, get in touch with you? I think that there are many from the animal shelter that are trying to outreach to you.
You can reach out to Alex, he'll give you my card, happy to talk, he can give you my cell phone, whatever works.
Thank you.
I'm always available for meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no one else who signed in on the administrative calendar, on a specific item on the administrative calendar. On the administrative calendar. Any matters for the record?
Laura Gillen, Rockville Center, New York, candidate for Town of Hempstead Supervisor. Good morning, everybody. I have a question with respect to item number 12. My question is whether members of the town board, I guess in particular Councilwoman Sweeney and Councilman Blakeman, since you seem to be the two that don't get all the information, what kind of disclosure there was about the bidding process for this contract and with respect to the qualifications? Because to my knowledge, I was unaware that Dover Catering Group or Dover Gourmet was in the ATM business. How long they've been in the ATM business, if that was made available to you?
Mr. Town Attorney, would you please?
There are full disclosures on file in the clerk's office of the owners of the company of the winning bidder.
So there are disclosures in the clerk's office, but we have town board members here.
Town board members also get a memo prior to the meeting telling them what the names, the individual names of owners of companies that have business before the town board.
But the information does not include the political contributions that have been made by the owner of that company. I had to go to the Board of Elections website to find out that thousands of dollars were given to the supervisor in the past about 12 months.
That was my next.
I think it would be more comfortable if we could have all the information in front of us instead of that extra layer that I had to go to the Board of Elections and find out that information.
Any further, and by the way, to the best of my knowledge, the company that won this bid is the same company that has operated the one ATM machine that we've had for many years, right outside the cafeteria. But any other questions on the calendar?
That's not really responsive to my question. I didn't ask if they operated one.
Well, you asked about qualifications,
How
so,
long they-
you did say that you didn't know that they were in the ATM business, and I'm advising you that that is the company that has, long before I was supervisor, received the bid, received the contract to operate the ATM machine that's outside the cafeteria, so I think it was responsive. So any other questions on this matter?
So, just to be clear, there was no disclosure to you about the qualifications. There may be one ATM that is run here by Dover Catering Group or Dover Gourmet.
There was a disclosure.
Not speak over me, it's my time, not your time.
Trying to answer the question.
Respond after I speak.
Trying to answer the question.
You can answer my questions after I finish speaking.
Go ahead.
So I just want to be clear, there was no disclosure about the scope of this bidder, Dover Gourmet's experience in the ATM business, other than this one ATM that they operate here, nor the campaign contributions. Is that correct, Councilwoman?
Unless I missed something with the first disclosure, I did not find any qualifications with regard to...
Mr. Rob, what is, Mr. Rob, no, I think it's an important question. It's an important, she wanted to know.
I'm I'm answering my question. So
Okay.
as far as the political contributions, no, I had to go to the Board of Election website to find out that information. I mean, I was able to find it there, but it should have been presented at the same time. I think it would be more helpful and tell a more holistic story.
Right, and that was in one of the amendments you proposed at the last meeting that was shot down, is that correct?
One of the men.
Okay.
That's what I thought, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else on the administrative calendar? There being none, please call the roll.
Supervisor Santillo.
Aye.
Councilman Rustino.
Aye, except on item number 12, on which I recuse myself. Mr. Supervisor, on item number 14, I said one question of the town attorney. Mr. Ron, or your deputy, this is an agreement with a Florida company, and I'm not sure if we can do it now, but in the future, paragraph 6 and paragraph 12 of the contract, they vest arbitration and choice of law in Florida. How is that going to be negotiated with the other town of Hempstead and perhaps choice of law and all arbitrations to occur in the state of New York? The venue may be placed in Nassau County. I just think that would be a better thing. I don't know if that's possible now.
Thank you, Councilman. This contract is with this company. This company we've been dealing with for a number of years in information and technology, and they hold either the rights, the licensing to a particular software that we use in IT, and so that's why we're using them. But thank you.
I'm not questioning the choice of the company. I'm just saying that in the event of a dispute, it's a contractual term that's really negotiable. If there's a dispute, I just think it would be better placed here. We are the town of Hempstead rather than have to go to Florida.
Thank you. We'll take a look at that, Councilman. Thank you.
How do you vote?
Oh, I vote aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilman Kingston.
I continue to call for greater transparency in Inspector General and an unimpeachable process that all residents can be confident in for the procurement of services and expenditure of town funds. The faux ethics legislation that was passed last week, in which only select council members received the text of the legislation, is a sham. Accordingly, I vote yes on all except for the following items in which I abstain: 11, 12, 13, and 14.
Okay, can I have a motion, please?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Supervisor Santino.
Aye.
Councilman Rustino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Diaz-Pasito. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilman Gooseby. Councilman Kingston.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to the public comment period. Pearl Jacobs.
First. Even Murray would give me a time to go first. I almost had a hard time the first time she did it.
Good afternoon. My name is Pearl Jacobs. I reside in Unionville. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby, at the September 5th meeting of the town of Hempstead, you were infuriated at a representative for Reclaim New York because you stated that you were depicted as being subservient to a white man, that white man being Supervisor Santino. On the flyer that was mailed out by Reclaim New York to your constituents in the town of Hempstead. You then went on to tell your story of how you fought against discrimination your entire life, even taking the issue of discriminatory practices in the town of Hempstead all the way to the Supreme Court, where you were victorious and subsequently became the first African-American councilwoman in the town of Hempstead. I truly applaud you for your commitment to fight injustice, social exclusion, and discrimination, because I too am an advocate for social justice. That is why I volunteer my time and efforts as a civic leader to be a voice that speaks truth to power for the residents of Uniondale. Uniondale is a community that suffers from social exclusion, discrimination, injustice, redlining, and a myriad of other atrocities that further marginalizes communities of color. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby, as our representative for District 1, would you support Uniondale in its fight for equality and inclusion? Would you help us take our fight to the Supreme Court so that we can be included in Governor Cuomo's vision of a vibrant and sustainable Long Island? As a voice for many residents in Uniondale, we strongly believe that a bright light needs to be shined on this sort of inequality, injustice, and marginalization that is still occurring in Nassau County in 2017. One would have to be ostrich-like not to recognize this glaring scenario that is occurring in communities of color in Nassau County. Additionally, Senior Councilman Goodsby, would you know who removed the Uniondale name from the water tower that overlooks Second Door Boulevard? Would you know who removed the Uniondale name from the water tower that overlooks Second Door Boulevard?
Commissioner Reinhardt, you want to come forward?
The water tower you're referring to is in the Roosevelt Field Water District. That was repainted in 2001. I do not believe before that it had a town designation on it.
It
It's
did.
always been sky blue.
Well, it did. I'm being told by some long-term residents that it did have a Uniondale designation on it. Someone had said that if you look closely, you could see where Uniondale has been taking off.
Like I said, it was
We're speaking of the same water tower that is in back of Vanderbilt.
yes, right by Lowe's.
That is the Uniondale water tower.
It's the Roosevelt Field Water District tower.
It's the Uniondale water tower. We bought this a few years ago for the East Garden City campaign. Can we have a meeting on this, Senior Councilwoman Goodsby?
It's within the corporate limits of the Roosevelt.
Maybe
Field
have
Water
a meeting on this issue, Senior Councilwoman Goodsby.
You can't hear because I don't have it on. Now you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you. So you said we may have a meeting. Thank you. Because the residents of Uniondale strongly request that the Uniondale name be put back on this water tower.
Let me listen to her, please. I'm listening.
Yeah, one at a time, please.
Let me listen to her and the question that you want to include.
Yes. No, that's it. We strongly request that the Uniondale name be put back on this water tower.
Well, I believe the senior councilman said that she will do
Yes.
research and get back to you.
And you'll get back to me to set up a meeting, Senior Councilwoman?
Call the office for me and give us a direct number so we can reach you, because there's some things I'd like to talk to you about, but I'm not able to reach you. I know you work on it.
Oh, no, you have I'll call and leave my number. I always leave my number when I call your office. I hope they'll give it to you. And as for my previous question, Senior Councilman Goodsby, as our representative for District 1, would you support Uniondale and fight for equality and inclusion? And would you help us take our fight to the Supreme Court so that we can be included in Governor Cuomo's vision of a vibrant and sustainable Long Island?
Well, you have to think about that one, because you know that's going to be extremely expensive.
Well, that's okay. We have nothing to lose in Uniondale, so it's all the way up. I think a civil rights lawsuit would be appropriate here. Thank you.
Okay. And you want to leave that with us?
I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. How you stand? How you stand?
Oh, may I speak for her? She has.
No, you gotta speak in person. How you stand? Okay. Gloria Marola.
She can sign it, she has to sign it. You need to sign it. She needs to sign it.
Your name and address for the audio record, please.
Gloria Morello, 764 Monroe Lane, Elmont, New York.
And please date it too. Put your title, please, and your dates.
Go ahead, Ms. Marola.
Okay, I missed the beginning of the meeting, so I have a couple of things. I wanted to ask on the Verizon water tower installations, can you reiterate what the $250,000 one-time fee is for?
Payment to us for Mr. Code, do you want Mr. Charles Code from the Town Attorney's Office?
Thank you, Supervisor. That was money that goes to the water district for the benefit of the ratepayers now.
The rental fee for the space, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right, in addition to the 53,000 for the year? No. Okay, and that's payment for
That
coming
district,
to us, that's
to that district that the tower is located in.
receivable.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to make a comment about diversity, since I've been hearing about it. And I live in Elmont, which is extremely diverse. And as you know, I make a lot of complaints regarding the work that is done. And they happen to be by diverse people. So I'm one of the, I think that quality is more important. Because if you look at the demographics of Elmont, we have completely diverse area there. So I just want to make a comment on that. And also, I just happened to do a little bit of investigating, and I can tell you that there is a tower that is definitely in Uniondale because of my questions on the Verizon dispute. Okay, there is a little discrepancy on the dates. It says that it's supposed to be, I know you had tried answering it earlier. It says that the contracts are every 5 years, and one of them started in 2009. Can you explain a little bit about that? Just explain simply.
What contract, I mean, you have to be clearer.
On the water tower, it says here that Verizon has a contract that started in 2009 for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 2013. I would assume it ends in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's supposed to continue for another 5 years. So we're only in 2017 here. Now, if you do the math.
Mr. Colby, you want to explain this?
They have to do technological upgrades now, and that's why we were able to renegotiate and receive the money that we're getting now, because they want to do upgrades to their systems.
Okay, one other thing. Which should be verified on the address of the East Meadow water tower. It's very vague, and what I'm asking is if you can just be more clear about the address, because when I went and checked it out, it's on Prospect Avenue. It's not on the opposite side that's listed on the...
Commissioner Reinhardt, do you want to explain that?
The East Meadow Water District actually has two water towers. There's one at Prospect Avenue, you're referring to. There's a second one at the dead end of Mitchell Street, which is actually in the town of Uniondale, but it's in the corporate limits of the East Meadow Water District. That's the one that the lease refers to. That tower is in the East Meadow Water District. It's in the town of Uniondale, and it's actually painted with the name of the town of Uniondale on it, so that may confuse you if you saw it. The two towers right next to each other there.
Okay. And that's also in East Meadow.
It's in the East Meadow Water District, correct.
So that disputes the other water tower, why we took that one off Uniondale.
Again, I don't believe the Uniondale was ever on that tower. I'm going to go and check back through the inspection records before it was painted last time and see. My recollection is we never had the work.
Yeah, let's do the research on that so we know for sure, rather than just disputing memories back and forth. I don't think it's productive. Okay? Anything else, Matt?
No, that's all I need to know.
Thank you very much. Mary Ellen Craig?
You mentioned Oak Street. We have been contacted by residents in the Northwest Civic Association who are concerned about a 7-Eleven, which is going into that mini shopping center. It's, you know, on Oak and the corner of Westbury Boulevard. They're very concerned that that will be a 24-hour, and they do not want that. Is there a local law which restricts the hours?
I don't believe.
There's not. We have lost a number of cases trying to regulate hours of businesses. So we do. So if 7-Eleven's historically a 24-hour operations.
Actually, not necessarily.
Well, no, I'm just.
I mean, the day.
They're independent operators, so they can open whenever they want. But yeah, we
I
have.
think the question is that we have attempted in the past and been overturned in the courts in an effort to regulate hours of operation. Is that correct, Mr. Ross?
Even those abutting residential areas.
Correct.
That's very unfortunate. People are very concerned. So as you know, we have a number of concerns about the development plan for the A. Holly Patterson property, and we recently reviewed parts of the traffic study with skepticism. We feel it is weighted to show more cars on Jerusalem Avenue to bolster their contention that their dense project will not adversely impact our area. And so we continue to urge downsizing in the number of units. And I don't know what the wiggle room is to work that out, but we're counting on you, senior councilwoman, to do what you can for us.
Well, listen, as long as we are following the law, remember that now.
Absolutely. Okay, in the interest of transparency and ethics reform, I propose that all board members and department heads, commissioners, and supervisors be required to publicly disclose their relatives, in-laws, outlaws, cousins, etc., working for the town.
I think that's a great idea. We tried to achieve that at the last meeting. For some reason, there was resistance to it. So I'm not sure what there is to hide there.
I don't think that was specifically, if I recall, but I hope we'll keep working on that. Recent articles on algae bloom emphasize and inform my concern previously about the removal of the roving pump-out service on the bays. Please reinstate this important environmental activity, because if it's not convenient, it's very easy for the boaters to just empty their waste material into the bays, and that is a very, very desperate problem for our bays. Thank you.
I'd just like to comment on that. I think you're absolutely right with respect to that issue, and the supervisor said that the reason that program was abandoned was because of the cost to the taxpayers. The simple solution to me would be to charge a reasonable fee for the pump out, which many boat owners contacted me and told me that they would be perfectly willing to pay. As a matter of fact, we might even make money on it if we did that.
Councilman, that's something on review for next season.
If I could add, I represent all the communities I represent around the water. I'm from Wanto. We have active boating communities. I'm not a boater myself, so I had to learn on the fly. But when this change was made, I didn't know what they were talking about because no one told me about it. What change? So I had to get up to speed on the change that the supervisor made, and I have had the amount of meetings that I have had, the calls I have made by voters upset about this potentially disastrous environmental situation. It's really important, and we were able to reach some workarounds this summer. But going forward, it seems to me that this should be a no-brainer. In addition, when I met with these voters, we were brainstorming that these guys aren't looking for anything free. They're not looking for a handout. This is, in many cases, recreational, but it is also a lifestyle and why so many people choose to live on the South Shore, and we would want to protect our waters. But we were brainstorming about different ideas. Maybe we could privatize it. Maybe there could be a fee that could be charged. There were all these things that were on the table, and they just seemed to get no traction. And when you're not having healthy communication, that's what happens.
Just to go revisit all of this, there are permanent pump out stations located throughout the town, several operated by the town, several operated by Nassau County, and one or two operated by private entities, where voters can take their boat to have it pumped out. The town did this summer operate a pump-out boat service in Zacks Bay, because it's a place where a lot of people congregate, so we went from boat to boat to boat in Zacks Bay. And we also established two other locations where the pump-out boat our pump-out boat would go to a buoy where people can go, can take their boats out, conveniently located, and can take their boats out to be pumped out there. So that's what we did for this season. What had been the practice before was that people with boats were getting their boats pumped out, docked at private yacht clubs, docked at their home, if they lived on the water and had a dock in their home, and taxpayer money was being used to go to private yacht clubs, where boats never left the dock to pump them out. And at a considerable cost that people who, as I said before, senior citizens who don't have a boat, young couples struggling to pay their mortgage on their first home or save enough money to buy a home, don't have a boat, and we were subsidizing people who have boats that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, one of the suggestions we're looking at for next year is to come up with a system where for a considerable fee that would cover all of our costs, where we might be able to continue that service. But I stand firm that senior citizens living on a fixed income and young people struggling to make ends meet each month, middle-class families struggling to make ends meet, should not have to subsidize folks who have $50,000 boats who don't want to take them away from the dock to go out to either a permanent pump out station. Well, a gentleman who came to this meeting said, well, that's going to cost me a couple $100 in gasoline. Well, you own a $50,000 boat. I mean, that's just, if it's recreational, I mean, I don't expect anybody to buy my golf clubs for me. I buy them myself. That's just the way it goes. So, but if we can come up with a system that works where we can have a fee that would cover the cost completely, then that would be something that we would consider. But I want to make it very, very clear, because people make hyperbolic statements without really telling the whole story. There are several, I believe the number is 7, permanent stations throughout along the South Shore where people can take their boats to be pumped out. We did operate a pump out boat in Zacks Bay, and we do operate 2 stations where on set times and set schedules where pump out boats would go to a designated buoy that was clearly advertised and delineated where it was, and the pump out boat would be there to pump people out. That seemed to work. If we were to consider going back to the old system, I would only do it in a way where the people are actually paying every penny for the fee. They're paying a fee that covers every penny that would cost. But any other comments on any other item?
I would like to just follow up on that, Mr. Supervisor. First of all, you're absolutely right. Many of the boat owners have told me that it is very expensive to travel to the pumping stations, and therefore they are consuming a lot of fuel. From an environmental standpoint, it seems to me that the town would want to engage in a program where we weren't requiring the fossil fuels that are being burned to drive the boats to these pump stations, if we could get a reasonable fee for that service, which they're willingly and happy to pay. That's number one. Number two, with respect to people with large boats, I would remind the supervisor that, especially in your community and surrounding your community, that there are many businesses that depend on the recreational boating industry. Those boats are sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sales tax is collected for that, which goes to defray costs. And we should be promoting recreational boating in this area, because this is really one of the main reasons why people live on the South Shore of Long Island, because of the boating. So I don't think we should begrudge people who can afford to buy a boat. In addition, as you're aware, Mr. Supervisor, the town has not kept current on our dredging program, and that many of the pumping stations are located in areas where many boats who have toilet facilities on them and need to be pumped out cannot reach them during certain periods of time, because those waters are not navigable because we have cut back on our dredging system. So those are the issues that were raised by constituents in my district who own boats. So it seems to me that rather than, and that's the point I think we need to make, that we go off willy-nilly doing these things without a comprehensive investigation as to what the consequences are, and typically it's done in secret without apprising other board members, especially board members who have constituents who live on the water or close to the water. And really, what we could have done from day one is sat down with the boat owners and worked out a plan where they would pay a reasonable fee that would cover the costs, and we wouldn't have had all this controversy.
If I could add, Mr. Supervisor, you have tried to portray me as rich and out of touch. To do the same to voters is a big mistake. There are a lot of good stuff.
No, you cannot make a statement like that. I've never portrayed anybody as rich and out of touch. And again, I want to say again very firmly, yeah, I'm concerned about fossil fuels. I'm concerned about the senior citizen on Social Security who is struggling to pay their oil bill during the winter season. And I'm looking to do everything I can in this town government to cut back on costs so that we can give taxpayers a break. And again, I want to say there are 7 permanent facilities. We had 2, to the best of my recollection, buoy locations, and where voters can take a short trip to the buoy and be pumped out on a set schedule. We continued the service unabated in Sachs Bay, and many of these boats are docked at private yacht clubs with toilet facilities. And obviously, if those boats are going out, they can certainly visit the buoy, or they could certainly visit one of the permanent stations. If those boats never leave the dock, all the folks have to do is get up off the boat and walk into the yacht club to do their natural business. So, you know, I'm not going to go back.
Excuse me. I was speaking. It was public comment period, and I was speaking. Oh, sorry, please.
Did you do an investigation as to the number of people?
I'm not going to go.
Versus.
Okay. I'm not. Yeah. This.
No, it's actually really important because.
Mr. Craig, do you have anything else?
Mr. Supervisor.
Do you have anything? No more questions.
You interrupted me. I'm allowed to speak, Mr. Supervisor. You interrupted me.
She was speaking. Let us speak.
Absolutely.
Let us speak.
How much money did we save by instituting this program?
My understanding is less than $10,000. And when I met with these voters, I said to them, okay, whatever the amount is that we're saving, would you all agree to be charged that amount? Let's just divide it up and figure out the fee. And without exception, every single voter said yes. And the idea that these wealthy boat owners and these, 50-foot yachts sitting at the yacht club and not wanting to use the facilities, it's just not factually correct. You always have 1 or 2 people who exploit a situation. There's no doubt. But that is not what the situation is. This is to protect our water so that kids can go, I'm still speaking, that kids can go tubing, and we want to keep the waters beautiful. And all of this was done in the dark. I represent this area. No one told me about it. The voters had to come and tell me about it. And we kept offering up solutions. Privatize it, charge it so that there is zero cost, or even the town has to makes money out of it. No, 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 no. Can I meet with the supervisor to discuss this? No. So you can portray me as the rich girl who's out of touch, but do not do that for the voters in my district. They're good, solid, decent, hardworking people.
I've never portrayed anyone as that, and I do remember saying 5 minutes ago that we were looking at a system for next year where we would be able to charge a fee for that service for those who avail themselves of it that would meet its cost. So I said that 5 minutes ago. So I think we will move on. Anything else, Ms. Craig?
I'd like to say, Mrs.
Oh my
Craig,
God.
I voted for it because I don't know anyone in my district, District 1, who owns a yacht, who should pay for someone else to go and take care of theirs. So if they're willing to pay for it, I'll certainly be happy, but not with the people in my district, number one, because there are too many people who have no place to live. They can't pay their mortgages, they can't pay their taxes, that's why they're losing their homes. So I really do not want.
Ms. Craig, do you have anything else?
First of all, I would like to say that I am pleased that there has been some problem solving on this. Secondly, it would be really unpleasant if that major yacht were to dispose of its debris into the waterways. And I'm hoping that you will be able to work this out. I don't think that $6,000, which is the amount that was, or a little bit more than that, would make a significant difference, and it could be environmentally important.
Thank you, Ms. Craig.
I would like to say that I was a teacher and I had class government in my classes each time. And I would constantly remind young people that they should not interrupt each other. And I find it very heartwarming that there are no students here to listen to this and to hear people constantly, and I'm sorry, Supervisor Santino, people start talking, your board members, and you constantly interrupt them. It is very unfortunate, and I hope that this will cease. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Jim Albius, sorry, from Amityville? No. Okay. Karen Montalbano?
Excuse me, Karen Montalbano, Baldwin. I'm here as a resident of Baldwin, where we're finally seeing some positive, real growth in our community. A lot of things are happening. And what I'm here for is to urge better communication, a consistent flow of information across all of the council members, because we really need to see all our elected officials are fully informed. The residents want to be able to go to our elected officials, and we should be able to go to our elected officials to get our full answers, because that's where we're supposed to go. I am here because there is a very special concern within our community, and that is that Grand Avenue and Merritt Road project. This is a redevelopment that has been long awaited in the community. I would say it's 2 decades. We have been sitting there, and we've been waiting for this light zone, which was designated by the town of Hempstead, to finally be done. And I want to be assured that this, and all the other projects that we have going in Baldwin, Mr. Santino, I would like to know that they are going to move along as quickly as possible with the full support of everyone on the board.
You can be assured it's a priority, and we're going to move it as quickly as we can.
And I would like to also be assured that my elected council person gets all the information, not just a little bit, but all of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Meet a Meriden.
Oh, come on, I don't even get a chance.
Dear Meredith Baldwin as well. Okay, where do I begin again? Night meetings were discussed earlier, and I believe, again, I don't want to misquote anyone, but I believe I heard that because there was such a lack of attendance in the past, that you felt it was okay just to keep the nominal number that you have. Like, funny, previous meetings I was told by a number of the elected officials seated before me, whether they looked me in the eyes or not, which I would confirm by my mentors that it is highly disrespectful to not have full eye support. But anyway, without the research, what about all the meetings that you all have with your constituents? Why couldn't you have, as Councilman Blakeman suggested, adjourn that issue, sever that issue, and guess what? Ask your constituents. Why couldn't you put the question, as Ms. Gordon provided information, you know that word that people like to throw out here, research? She provided information out of her own time and on her own dime, in the hope that our elected officials would hear the cries of the residents. To suggest that what you're doing is okay because previously not many people attended, that's disrespectful to the ones who did attend, and you're not giving an opportunity for others who might not be able to sit through all of this Ringling Brothers format circus that we pay deeply for, to have the opportunity. So I resent the fact that on the one hand you say that you listen to your constituents, that you bring the information to your constituents and you bring back what their views are, when you just vote blanketly on decisions without our input. I resent that, and I wanted that on the record. Doing business with Dover Gourmet, I'm sure that was brought up before, and again, I reiterate my support of Councilwoman King Sweeney's objection, and I support the fact that she alone, for the most part, stood out, but I also appreciate the comments that Councilman Blakeman has made in this regard. Wouldn't just the hint of an impropriety warrant that our elected officials responsible as the stewards of our funding would think not to invest, again, our resources and connect themselves to an organization that has basically, whose principles have basically been under federal investigation. There have been lawsuits that have attached Dover Gourmet dating back years between the Nassau County Health and anybody, all of your people over here who are sitting, highly paid, they can all pull it up on their phone, that they have been involved in litigation with the county as well as other agencies and organizations. Just the hint of impropriety would warrant, again, our elected officials to pause in being involved with that. Lastly, what is the town of Hempstead's position with regard to this outfall pipe idea that the county is now dancing around, which would involve using an outdated conduit, water conduit, along Sunrise Highway that would impact Baldwin residents as well as Wantor residents? And the alleged cost savings would not, again, be realized by those of us who have to continue to pay for the misrepresentations of our elected officials.
Well, I personally am very suspicious of it. I don't believe it will work. I believe, as I've always said, that the answer to discharges from the Bay Park sewage treatment plant into Reynolds Channel is an outflow pipe that goes directly from the plant into the Atlantic Ocean. That using a century-old water pipe, old Brooklyn Waterworks pipe running straight through Baldwin and Merrick and Freeport and many other communities, Belmore, Wantor, into the Cedar Creek plant, I think it is, I am highly suspicious of it. I don't think it will work. I don't think it's good policy. I think it's penny wise and pound foolish. And I think the answer is for the federal government to step up with the state and the county and put together and build an outflow pipe directly from Bay Park into the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, and I do appreciate those comments, and considering that we received over $800 million initially from the federal government that was supposed to be used through the state to do just what you said, and that money is now gone, and we're looking at another investment that's supposed to protect the interests of the residents. I just wanted to know where you stood with that. Lastly, I truly almost fell off the chair when the references about being concerned about senior citizens maintaining their homes and paying oil bills. I have some suggestions, again, since we're going into budget season. 1, reduce their taxes. 2, subsidize their costs. And 3, why don't all of you agree to pay cuts? You know, many of us have not had the increases. We don't get the perks that all of you get just during the course of your administration. So if you're looking at some ways to do that, stop making it a photo op quote and just put some real teeth to it.
Thank you, Ms. Merriman.
Thank you.
Diane Madden?
I never get a chance. I'm going to be last. With the mental disease, I'm going to get a chance to be second to last. She usually beats me.
I wanted to comment. I was hoping Mr. Ryan would pick up on this. I keep saying the behaviorist contract is illegal. Supervisor named Stephen D'Esposito, Jerry Marino, Bill Mueller, Albina Katrina, and Kevin Denning on an oversight committee. You put out RFPs for an animal behaviorist. You advertise in Newsday for an animal behaviorist. The contract you signed, now mind you, you did have a behaviorist, a licensed behaviorist, Charlene Sorrentino applied. She was looking to charge the town $60 an hour, but you charged the unlicensed, unqualified person. You hired the unlicensed one for, Charlene was $40 an hour. The one you hired was $60 an hour. You actually passed a resolution not for an animal behaviorist, which is what the RFP called for, and the advertisements called for. You hired and twisted the words and hired a consultant who does not have a license, who only has certifications as per webinar subscriptions. So either you have all been hoodwinked, or this is a big scheme and a scam that's defrauded the public. And I'm looking at foil after foil and invoice after invoice of Mr. Conroy and Mr. Marino signing off on thousands and thousands upon thousands of dollars being billed, I average about $5,000 a month, for 35 hours a week to do research on town time, to drive out all over the place as a consultant. This is a fraudulent contract, and I'm wondering how you have allowed it to go on this long, and how Santino, you didn't keep your word, and you hired and twisted the words and contracted with a consultant. And what are you going to do about it?
If there's a question there, I think it is, why did we hire this person? I think the answer to that is, we had a panel who interviewed all of the applicants, and this is the person who was thought to be most qualified to fill the position.
That panel, none of them are experts, number one, on animal sheltering or behavior. And that makes it even worse, that they would know that an RFP went out, and mind you, it was taken down off the website. I had to remind you to put it back up. And you were going to hire this person for $80,000 in late 2016, still not qualified in 2017, and you hired her for $109,000 a year, a six-figure salary for anyone in this room could be a consultant. Why? Why did you turn down the one applicant you had that had a license? Why didn't you refer to the civil service exam where you had an applicant with a license and a proven record that scored a 95 and met every criteria? Why did you hire the person that has no qualifications for $109,000 a year. This is fraud.
Well, once again, I think the panel, the committee who ruled on this disagrees with you and found the other person to be the most qualified.
Okay, well, I'm glad you have that on record, because your RFP does not match your resolution. Did you know anything about
Could
this?
you explain what the requirements are to receive such a license and why we would pick someone who is a consultant over someone who's licensed?
It's a job
I'm not
favor.
sure.
It's a job favor, basically. Essentially, that was a job favor.
Is
A
it-
six-figure job. You need a license. You need certain qualifications. You need certifications. In-class time. What this alleged behaviorist, who taunts herself as a behaviorist who's not, barely a trainer, only has certifications that were through like online webinars. So for $109,000, we have someone unqualified, where this board of Santino's personal friends turned away qualified, licensed behaviorists. And not only do the taxpayers pay for this, I mean, it's outrageous. You know, I'm looking at these invoices and thousands of dollars. It's a joke on us. It's been hurting the animals because Pastoria does not allow her to handle animals that are very aggressive, that need rehabilitation, that have issues after being in the shelter for so long. These animals are kept in prison, in cages, because he's so afraid she's going to get bit.
How do other municipal shelters handle the hiring of animal behaviorists? Are they licensed or are they?
They're licensed, that's correct. That's correct. Smithtown contracted with the very behaviorists that Town of Hempstead turned away. Of course, the bully volunteers have a rumor going around that she's been fired. She's not been fired. The contract is in effect. In fact, those council people have me on speed dial. They're making a lot of changes out there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Madden. Felix Picachi?
We'll talk.
Name and address for the record, please.
Felix Picachi, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square, New York. I'm glad we became an environmentalist a few minutes ago. I've been, for 7 years, I've been talking about the mailings, the thousands of trees, paper wasted, you know, the poor taxpayer you're worried about. Those mailings serve very little purpose to the town. There's more efficient ways of doing it. All of a sudden now you're concerned about the poor taxpayer. Thank you for that, at least. On the State of the Town address you gave last week, I sign up for everything electronically, even North Hempstead, Oyster Bay, I go school districts. I never got a notification of that. I read in the Newsday that you're going to have the State of the Town. And also, I record off online the meetings, you know, so if you have the live stream going, I could record that.
Mr. Picachi, you shouldn't feel alone. I wasn't invited either.
I was going to get to that. You had to contract your photographer and you had to contract live stream, you had to have people here. So you knew about the meeting. Why didn't you notify the public at least a day in advance or something? Why didn't I get an email or anything that cost $0 to do? Any particular reason? Okay. Has the 2016 audit been completed yet?
Mr. Conroy? Controller Conroy?
It has not been completed by law. It needs to be completed by September 30th. We are expecting a draft any day.
Okay. I put together a little booklet from April 18th of this year. Santino to tout budget turnaround. Newsday was nice enough to write a story about that. And then you had your own press release, which is a page and a half. And then you sent out a mailing, you know, color mailing, touting the $5 million surplus. And then at the April 25th meeting, I asked you a question, and I put it up online, I believe last night, that when I asked you, did an independent auditor, what are the results of that $5 million surplus? You You said yes. It's online that you said yes, and I asked if I could FOIL it, and Mr. Ra answered, you may FOIL it. And here's my FOIL request I sent out on April 28th. And then I got a response from Marie Jerome a few days later, May 5th, saying that it's going to be not done yet. And then on May 24th, Marie Jerome indicated it was going to be done on October 1st. Now, you said it was audited independently, and now it's all the results, everybody, the controller saying it's October 1st. Why did you lie to me?
Mr. Conway, would you please address?
I'm trying to find out the question in there.
Question is, why did Supervisor Santino say there was an independent audit on April 25th when in fact there was no independent audit on April 25th? The numbers were never audited.
Why don't you just explain the various audits that we go through with the AUD, with the state, and then the outside independent auditor, our own internal audits and things of that nature? Why don't you just give it quick?
I will. Thank you, Supervisor. First and foremost, the town is on a calendar year, unlike the county, which is on a fiscal year. We close our books by law and file what's known as an AUD, annual audit document, with the state of New York. It's required to be filed by April 30th. Religiously, we get that done, and we have always gotten it done timely. That filing and that document is in accordance with the State of New York Controller's Office Chart of Accounts. The State of New York, the Controller's Office in particular, reviews it within a few days, gets back to us, may have some questions. Most of the questions are not material, it's about reclassification of certain items, and they put it up on the website. After a few days of filing the AUD with the state, our external auditors, Albrecht, Vigiani, and Zork, appear on the property to do their audit. They come with a staff of 3 or 4 people. They do an extensive audit. It generally takes 3 or 4 months, and by law, they need to file their financial statements, which is an audit of the town's finances, and issue their report. It's not our report, it is their report. And religiously, it carries with it an unqualified opinion, which basically means there are no issues and no problems with the town. That's the process.
Okay, so there was no audit done as of April 25th. According to my FOIA request, no records exist. So Mr. Santino gave me a false statement. Also, on the numbers that were submitted to the state controller, if you look at the numbers, and I got all the numbers, it's readily available, openbooknewyork.com, it shows for 2016, $530 million in revenues, and expenditures, $582 million in expenditures. So that, if you do the math there, it's like $52 million in the negative. I looked up to be thorough. I went through the special districts because I knew those are included. There was no material differences in their numbers that would make this, different for the town. How do you get to the $5 million? Where's the document that shows the $5 million surplus when the state controller shows like a minus $52 million loss?
That the AUD document is prescribed as chart of accounts by the state of New York. So essentially, if you go through there and cherry pick certain items, you're not going to get the answer you want. For example, the item you just mentioned, there was a budget note floated in 16 worth $32 million. You'll see it as part and parcel of the expenditure line, but there's no offset on the revenue line, which doesn't make the picture look all that good. So I would suggest that you come and see me. I'd be glad to go over this with you, and I'll explain to you how we have, in 16, an operational surplus.
And that's the $5 million.
That's the $5 million.
That the budget is in 15 for 2016 anticipated a use of $23 million in in fund balance in order to fund the operations of the government. Because of the cost savings that were implemented during the 2016 calendar year, not only did we not utilize that $23 million in drawdown from fund balance, for the operations, we added operationally $5 million back to surplus. If you do the math, it's actually 23 and a half, 5. If you do the math, it's essentially a $29 million turnaround. Would you let the controller answer the question before you pursue your agenda? Go ahead.
I thought that was a statement, not a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Conlon. I asked him a question and you didn't give me the opportunity to answer.
In 2016, the Controller's Office, the town of Hempstead, closed its books with a $6 million deficit. So what we do, we look at it and we dissect it. What gave rise to a $6 million deficit? 3 items. Number 1, there is a garbage tax case that dates back over 25 years. We got a judgment worth $25 million. We sat down with Nassau County. Nassau County not really having the ability to pay. Nassau County basically saying, we're going to tie this up in the courts. We settled for $18.2 million on that judgment, which meant we had a one-time write-off in 2016 worth just north of $7 million.
It's a paper write-off, essentially.
Paper write-off because it's a paper write-off. And it affects the surplus, it affects the deficit, it adds to the deficit. In addition to that, we had a highway inventory write-off. We have been cleaning up our inventory with a new inventory system, which gave rise to an approximate $4 million write-off. Now, closing the books with $6 million overall, and you add those 2 write-offs up worth $11 million, our operation, what we could control with regard to revenues and expenses, gave rise to an operational surplus of $5 million. Those are the 3 tentacles.
Mr. Conlon, I'm sorry, go ahead. It's your time, Mr. Kratch. If you want, I'll...
You go first.
Okay. So basically, in other words, in layman's terms, we've been using our reserves, our savings, over the past few years to fund our government because basically we are not meeting our expenses with the revenue that we currently have. Is that correct?
Over the last few years, with the exception of this past year, we have had a balanced budget, not a functionally balanced budget. A balanced budget means, yes, a certain reliance on fund balance to balance your budget.
But my first budget, Mr. Controller, as supervisor, was a absolutely balanced budget.
Not only that, Supervisor, we added to fund balance by, I have to go back and check, but we actually restored fund balance.
What is our fund balance now?
It's approximately $100 million. There's restricted and unrestricted, so I'm be clear about that. Restricted fund balance is approximately half that number. That's items that you have tied up in your prepaids, your receivables, and your inventory. It's not cash.
Are we going to use any of the fund balance going forward to finance the operations of town government for the next fiscal year?
Our objective, and we're putting the budget together, the budget will be filed with the clerk at the end of this month. Our anticipation at this point is we will have a functionally balanced budget whereby no use of fund balance.
We will actually add fund balance.
Yes, we will.
So, and Mr. Supervisor, one other thing. So, I also did not get invited to the State of the Town address, which was a town-wide function. And I'm just wondering what your thought process was in eliminating from the invitation for a town-wide official meeting, members of the town board. I just can't imagine what the outcry would be if President Trump had a State of the Union message where he only invited certain people, or Governor Cuomo had a State of the State and only invited legislators that he wanted to attend rather than invite all the legislators. I'm just wondering what the thought process was in not inviting me and Councilwoman Erin King Sweeney. I don't think Mr. Ambrosino was invited either.
There was no invitation. Mr. McCutcheon, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah. What do you mean there was no?
There was no. Just what it says in the English language. There was no invitation. It said stuff.
How did everybody know about it?
Some people heard about it. Some didn't. There was no formal invitation. There was no. asked and answered, there was no invitation. There was no asked and answered, there was no invitation. Mr. Procacci, are you going to continue or are you going to step down? Mr. Procacci, go ahead. Mr. Procacci, go ahead.
You didn't do this to man Meredith.
Go ahead.
Let you have it.
Mr. Procacci, go ahead.
Did you share these financials on the $5 million surplus with the other board members? Because they're going to have to vote on this budget next week, for the calling of the hearing.
Mr. Controller, would you explain how the budget process works as opposed when it gets submitted to the clerk, when it gets submitted to the town board, et cetera, et cetera?
The submission to the town clerk by law is September 30th. The budget hearing is on October 13th. Between the two dates, the tentative budget becomes the preliminary budget. Subsequent to it becoming the preliminary budget, each one of the council members will get a copy of it. They will certainly peruse it, and I will arrange for a meeting a few days after they receive it to field any questions that they may have and apprise them of all the particulars as it relates to the budget.
Mr. Procacci, to answer, first of all, I appreciate everything that you're doing, Mr. Conroy, in the context of the budget going forward. But Mr. Procacci, to answer your question specifically, the answer is no. And I want to draw everyone's attention to the Office of the New York State Controller, Tom DiNapoli, information for town officials. Alex, do you mind distributing this to everyone on the board and also to the town attorney? In this is guidelines. The guide was prepared to help you comply with the various duties and responsibilities of your office and to help you understand and strengthen your town's finances. This is presumably addressed to the supervisor. And in this, Chapter 2, Fiscal Responsibilities and Requirements. Number 10. Alex, do you mind just so everyone has it? Providing to the town board at the end of each month a detailed statement of all monies received and dispersed during the month, as well as filing a copy with the town clerk, town law, section 125, subsection 2. Other types of financial reports, such as comparisons of budget estimates with actual transactions, investment activities, and other financial data, could also be submitted periodically to the town board and other management personnel. Now, I can survive not being invited to the State of the Town address, but what's not appropriate is when I'm not provided with this type of information that the state controller requires to be provided to the town board. So I hope going forward that we would embrace transparency and truthfulness and actually inform the town board members about the state of the budget. If we have such a great surplus and finances are so great, I'm not sure why I would not receive this information on a monthly basis.
Mr. Supervisor, if I might, the reference that you referred to, Town Law 125-2. Let me just start out by saying the information to town officials issued by Tom DiNapoli's office is directional and informational only. It doesn't have the force of law.
We really want to have a conversation.
Could we allow, please be quiet in the audience. Could we give the town attorney the courtesy to finish his statement?
The report.
Quiet in the audience, please.
The reports that are referred to in number 10 that you read about have to do with, on the 125-2 of the town law, have to do with the town welfare officers' monies revolving fund. I don't believe, and Mr. Conroy will correct me if I'm wrong, that the town of Hempstead does not have a town welfare officers' money revolving fund. Is that correct, Mr. Conroy?
That is correct, yes.
So that's what
So, based on the fact that you're saying this isn't enforceable, you think it's a good idea that we haven't met on the budget since October of 2016?
Wow.
That's 11 and a half months that we haven't met, and we have a budget vote coming up in several weeks. Is that a good idea? I mean, as I said, I can handle not being invited to the State of the Town address, but to not be briefed on the budget.
Mr. Controller and Mr. Town Attorney, do we fully comply with the law in terms of budget submissions?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Procacci, do you have anything else in your remaining time?
I just want to reiterate, the state control's report here shows a $52 million negative cash flow. Maybe you have some ways of doing this thing with the $5 million surplus thing, but you didn't provide any documents to me, even though you said they existed. You didn't provide any documents to the town board, even though you said they existed. So you lied to me.
Thank you very much. Stuart Kroll. Mr. Crowe. Richard Shuren. Your name and address for the record, please.
Richard Shuren, 167 Jefferson Avenue, Harbor Isle, New York. Good morning. I have a question concerning the Silico project in Harbor Isle, which I believe you're familiar with. Just to recount a little bit of the history. This has been going on for about a decade, as you know, Mr. Supervisor, when you were town council for the area. The community came out in force many times with respect to this project, and a agreement was reached with this developer restricting the number of units that he could build in return for a restriction on rental units. He was granted a significant amount of units in return for this restriction on rentals. As you know, the developer challenged that, and his challenge was upheld on the basis that the law department failed to substantiate any good reason for the denial of his application for relief from that restriction. That decision was upheld in the appellate division, was upheld in the Court of Appeals, and has now, I believe, a motion for reconsideration, or whatever you want to call it, was denied. It now has been finally decided against the town. So it appears that myself and my neighbors are going to be subjected to a very, very large development in our area. And I just want to note for the record, of course, as you know, in 2013, when dozens of residents came out, you sent a letter to all the residents telling them how you would support us and you would stand by us. And now it turns out that we've lost in court, and a representation has been made to me by an attorney who works for the town of Hempstead that there is some plan, or there is something that the town of Hempstead plans to do, and that a letter will be sent to the community informing us of what the town plans to do. So my question to you is, can you tell me what does the town now plan to do with respect to this project?
We are still reviewing the most recent decision and looking at what available legal rights we have.
Mr. Ra, that comment, it was a one-line decision from the Court of Appeals. It takes a second to review it.
Yes, I understand that, but procedurally, there are other things that may be able to be done, and we're still looking at that. None of this stuff happens overnight. It takes time, and we're looking at it.
This case has been pending for at least 3 or 4 years. This process has been
Probably many longer than that.
This process has been going on for 10 years. There's many residents, as you know, Councilman Diaz-Esposito, who are very concerned about this, who have contacted your office, who live next to this area, that are very concerned about it, and we are completely in the dark. And all we find out is that we continually lose on appeal. So can you assure the residents, can you say anything about what the town plans to do to address the situation?
Well, I think since it's a legal matter, we need to refrain and leave our comments.
It's no longer
the attorney's office.
You've lost completely in court.
There is still one avenue that we may be able to avail ourselves of, and we're looking at that.
Well,
additionally, I've been responsive to all the Island Park, especially my Island Park neighbors, and I will continue to do that. As soon as I'm advised by our council, I will make sure that I move forward. If I have to have, when I have community meetings, we will discuss it and move forward.
Well, Mr. Mueller represented to me that a letter was being drafted to all the community members.
Well, we're going to just stand on the comment of the town attorney.
Mr. Mueller.
We're going to stand on the comment of the town attorney. We're going to stand.
You can't tell me whether we're going to get a letter or not?
When the decision is made, when the decision has been reviewed, and whatever options still exist have been reviewed, then we'll obviously communicate to the residents.
Has there been a review within the law department as to what went wrong, as to why we lost, and why the court held that we didn't substantiate a good faith basis for the support of the restriction? Has there been any review of what went wrong?
Since the matter's still in the litigation, I can't comment.
Okay, I'll transition to, I know that Dover was mentioned at this meeting. I wasn't present at the time, but I want to comment that I think I've noticed that members of the board, specifically you, Councilman Esposito, and also yourself, Supervisor, have appeared at various publicity events that have been run by the owner of Dover for various restaurants. Considering that the town has substantial contracts with Dover, I think that from an ethical perspective, it doesn't seem appropriate to me for council people and supervisors in the town in general to participate and publicize and support his business establishments. I can imagine that when his contracts come up for review, it's reasonable to assume that there might be a conflict there, considering your participation at these events, whether there's a quid pro quo, whether he expects you to do this, whether it's part of the deal you have with him. I've also noted that he advertises his other restaurants at Town of Hempstead facilities, specifically Malibu. I see advertisements for Peter's Clam Bar at the Malibu establishment. I wonder, is that part of the contract that you have with him that permits him to do that?
All of his contracts were bids, and he was the successful highest bidder where he had to pay the town, or lowest bidder in other instances. Everything he has been bid.
Does the contract permit him to advertise his other restaurants at the Town of Hempstead facilities?
Yeah. In the facilities that are town-owned, that are then leased to him, yes, he does have that.
He has the right to advertise his other business establishments.
Yes, because when you lease, you become an owner for a period of time.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily give you the right to
Thank you very much, Mr. Sherman. Rory Gordon.
Rory Gordon, Hauppauge, New York. Earlier, Mary Ellen Craig was speaking, and Mr. Santino, you said, one of the things we are looking at for next year. My question is, who is we? Who is we? You know, like,
The administration, the executive branch of this government.
what, who? Is that,
That's me, my staff, commissioners.
okay, so it's the board?
The executive branch of this government is me, my staff, my commissioners. When I said we, that's what I meant. Those items that then require town board approval get submitted to the town board for their affirmation or for their dissent.
Okay, this question is for Mr. Blakeman and Ms. Sweeney. How do you pass laws, if I've seen it passed here in the last year and a half, when you don't have the sufficient information? Shouldn't something be done about that?
I think,
Yeah,
answer to
can
that
I get
question, we wanted to include that in our ethics package where members of the town board independently would have the right to hire and fire their own staff, that they would be given a budget for salaries, that they would be given a budget for their office, including mailings, so that we could communicate with our constituents without censorship from the supervisor's office. So, in fact, I can't speak for Aaron, but I'm still pursuing that, and I think that we are entitled to that. And I think it's a disservice to the constituents in the 3rd Councilmanic District that their representative does not have that, and that will be something that we will be addressing in the very near future.
Yeah, I'm open to any ideas possible to try to bring some light and some transparency to this board. You may recall, this is probably getting into the weeds, but about 2 board meetings ago, I tried to bring an Inspector General resolution to the table. And because the town attorney was on vacation, the deputy town attorney was not authorized to speak to me. I had to go in the town attorney's office and sit down and say, I'm not moving until you can help me get this resolution in a form that would be suitable to file with the town clerk. I mean, every roadblock has been there. I was pleading with people to try to help me, and there's no resources available. I mean, it is set up so that you don't have an independent voice. So I'm going to keep fighting the good fight. I don't know what the answer is. Councilman Blakeman and I both went to law school. We're both practicing attorneys. We're certainly putting our heads together to try to figure a way through this impasse. But I think a first good step would be for the town board to meet, obviously subject to all the appropriate sunshine laws, but to actually communicate with each other. I remain available. I have my calendar here. If anyone wants to set up a date, we can sit down and meet. I think that would be a good first step.
Okay, Ms. Gordon, would you continue, please?
I'm kind of confused because you passed laws and these people clearly that sit on the board didn't have information. So how did the laws get passed in December?
Ms. Gordon, the calendar is submitted to the town board, and they have the opportunity to review it and then to vote on it. So that's how it works. It is, there is the executive branch of government, and then there is the legislative branch.
The folks that sit here passed the free air law, and they passed the windows law, and they the animal behaviors, but they didn't have the correct information.
That's your opinion, and maybe the opinion of other members of the board. But again, I think the basic answer is that the executive proposes, the board then can either affirm or dissent. The resolutions are given to them. The opportunity is there for them to, as clearly happens, ask questions here at this public board meeting, and we move on. So do you have anything else to say other than...
Ms. Gordon, if I could just correct that, as we may recall at the last town board meeting, we were dealing with so-called ethics legislation, and I think we have proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Councilman Blakeman, Councilman Ambrosino, and myself did not receive the critical amendment to that ethics legislation. And I actually unfortunately had to do a FOIL request to find out who drafted that legislation, when it was completed, what was the distribution list, and I actually received a FOIL that was not responsive to my request. I'm going to have to FOIL my FOIL, I guess. But it is without question that Councilman Blakeman, Councilman Ambrosino, and myself did not receive that amendment. Newsday told me about it at 7:45 a.m., which kind of screwed up my morning routine. I was on my Let's Go, just about to go into the shower, and then I had to go deal with that, send a text to the supervisor, send a text to the town attorney, which I read at the last meeting, and you can find it on my Facebook, saying, please provide me with a copy of this amendment. And it wasn't just an amendment changing a date or some typo, which is all fine. This had to deal with the whole issue of the income cap and the waiver and all of that stuff. It was a 2-page amendment that, if you remember at the last meeting, was filled with questions and unexplained answers and how it's enforceable and all that. So while I agree with the supervisor, there's an executive function, there's a legislative function, it's posted on the calendar 100%, that's what we should be doing. But without question, those who oppose the supervisor on this ethics legislation did not receive the key amendment. And those who supported him did. It is factual. I have it with Newsday, I have it with my text, I have it with my half-answered FOIL. I need a lot of experience with foiling. Can you foil a foil? I'm not sure how we do this. We how to correct a foil.
Marty, we all get the same problem you do when it comes to foil.
Okay, Ms. Gordon, go on, please.
We're talking about the pump-out stations and the poor senior citizens, and you want to save them money. I got a great idea. Why don't we cut back on the mailers? The mailers are what? $4 or $5 million a year. I'm not saying to eliminate them completely, but bring the budget down to a reasonable amount. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is you made it very clear, Supervisor, that it was just a click for people to get public notices.
okay? And he was saving money by not being in Newsday and putting it in Long Island Business News. It's just a click. It's just a click for the people to look at the mailers. Put them online. It's just a click. Most of the people throw them out. Maybe the seniors look at them, so let them opt in. I know we went through this once before, and Michael Leary gave me a whole dissertation on why you couldn't do it. But seriously, it's so much money you would save, and it's unfortunate for you, your face wouldn't be on a piece of paper 25 times. You know, and it's wrong. You know, you're using, okay, let's get over that. Tell me about the state of the town address. Why didn't I know about it?
There were no formal invitations.
I
That's
didn't
why.
even get here.
So you use this building for your own personal agenda, is that correct?
That's not correct. There were no formal invitations.
How'd they get here?
How did the people know?
There were no formal, there were people here, there were many people who did not come. They didn't know about the chief come.
They just magically appeared? How did they know? They had to get notified.
Ask them individually how they found out. There was no formal invitation, there was no sign posted, there was no, it was not done with pomp and circumstance. We didn't have a color guard, we didn't have anything other than a speech. So.
But you use this room, it's taxed.
This room is used for a lot of meetings and a lot. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby held, as we indicated earlier, a procurement seminar for minority and women-owned businesses in this room. So,
Did she notify people?
I would like to ask my colleagues on the town board who did attend.
This is the councilman, with all due respect, this is the public. This is not grilling other town board members. Ms. Gordon, this is not, with all due respect, I will run the meeting. This is not grilling each other town board members.
I'd like to know
Ms. Gordon,
my colleagues got invited.
Ms. Gordon, please go forward.
Okay, I'd like to know how the colleagues of Mr. Lakeman and Ms. Sweeney got invited.
I couldn't hear you. What?
How did the colleagues of Ms. Blakeman and Mr. Blakeman and Ms. Sweeney get invited?
They weren't invited. There were no
How'd they learn about it?
invitations. I don't know how many times I need to say it. It was in Newsday that morning and online, and I guess some people read about it and some didn't. We did not go through the process of a formal invitation. It's asked and answered. Could you go forward, please?
Supervisor, if I might, I just want to make sure the record is clear. There was a notice in Newsday. It was a public address on the state of the town by the supervisor of the town. It is not correct to say that it was used for his own personal reasons. He's the supervisor of the town. He gave a report to the public on the state of the town in this room, and it was in Newsday.
When was it Newsday?
It was in Newsday, I believe, the morning of or the day before.
Day of.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't a formal meeting. It did not have to be noticed.
Ms. Gordon, go ahead, please.
God, you guys, this transparency thing, it better happen here soon because you're falling apart. You told us this, for 2 years somebody can't work in the field if they leave here as an employee. Is that correct?
That's part of the ethics legislation that was passed, correct?
Okay. And it was not that way before?
That's correct.
You don't even read your own code of ethics. It's on the website. It's on the website. Future employment. No person who has served as an officer or employee of the town of Hempstead shall, within a period of 2 years after the termination of such service or employment, appear before any board or agency of the town of Hempstead. You don't even read your own stuff. You take credit for it, Mr. Santino.
That's the new one.
No, it's not. It's here. It's right here from 1990. Don't tell me. It's on the 3rd page.
Not the current ethics say that you cannot work on any matter that you have participated on for a period of 2 years. But you could, from day one, after you left the town, work on other things. You couldn't, but you can't work on a matter that you had participated in.
So as usual, we're going to just twist the words here.
No, this is a much broader prohibition as opposed to if you were a commissioner working on a particular road project and then you went to work, you retired and then you went to work for the construction company that's doing that project. That was always prohibited under the existing legislation. You would not now be able to, if you retired here, to come back and work on any project whatsoever for any other department, whether it was the department you were the commissioner of or not, or whether you had anything to do with it previously. You would be proscribed for 2 years from doing any business before the town. It is a much broader restriction.
No person who has served as an officer or employee of the town of Hempstead shall, within a period of 2 years after the termination of such service or employment, appear before any board or agency of the town of Hempstead or receive compensation for any services rendered on behalf of any person, firm, corporation, or association in relation to any case, proceeding, or application with respect to which such person was directly concerned or in which he personally participated during the period of his service or employment or which was under his active consideration.
Exactly. That's what I just explained, yes. You may not understand it, but that's exactly what I just explained.
That's what's on the website from 1990.
Correct.
That's what I said.
I'm agreeing with you.
What does it say?
Yes.
You told us last week that this was your new thing.
Because now you can't work on any project whether you had a direct influence on it or not before. You can't do anything for anybody that pertains to this township.
You couldn't before.
Only if you specifically worked on it before. This broadens it significantly.
All right, Mr. Santino.
All right, Ms. Gordon. Anything else? Thank you. William McCabe.
William McCabe, Hempstead, New York. The plaintiffs in the free air case have sent a letter from their attorney to the town attorneys, friends, donors, town attorneys, kind of the same thing, in regards to trying to attempt to save taxpayer dollars, save the court from being further burdened with this case. Because as you know, and seven newspaper articles have said it so far, that the town has wasted $36,000 of taxpayer money on this case. And the town sent a letter back to the plaintiffs and their attorneys saying that the town refuses to oblige and will continue to go ahead with continuing with the law. They will not maintain status quo. The town said that they will not repeal the law. So I just wanted to make the board members aware that that is by no means a capitulation on the part of the plaintiffs. They've asked that I come here and say that it is not a capitulation, it is not waving a white flag. We will continue with the lawsuit. The plaintiffs will continue with the lawsuit, regardless of expense. But it's probably in the best interest of the town to figure something out in order to avoid the taxpayer expense, because the plaintiffs are not going to go away. We're not going to go away. The gas station owners are not going to go away. So I just wanted to let you know, make you avail of that information. Additionally, there haven't been any bills, as far as I know, for the past 9 months for that case. Some information was spoiled. It was said that there weren't any bills. Have there been bills for the past 9 months for the free air law case?
Thank you for your question. You know I can't answer it. You're a litigant, and the case is under litigation.
I'm not a litigant.
I will not comment.
I'm not a litigant in the case.
I will not comment on pending litigation.
Okay. There have not been any bills that were given in the FOIL request. However, I know that the plaintiffs have had bills and have had court appearances over the past 9 months. So I can only imagine that the town of Hempstead must have incurred expenses in regards to this lawsuit in the past 9 months. So is it presumptuous of me to suggest that those bills aren't being given to folks who are foiling it?
If there were documents that met the terms of your FOIL, you would get the documents. Nobody hides anything.
Okay, I just wish to reiterate that the plaintiffs are not going away. The town has wasted money on this, and we're going to continue to be outspoken, the gas station owners and the plaintiffs. And that's it for now.
Hold on one second, you're talking about foils. I think this is a good conversation we can have about foils, because I sent in a foil on September 7th, the last town board meeting, you might recall, when the supervisor would not answer my questions about the drafting of this amendment. And I wrote on my foil the date that the aforementioned amendment was drafted, including the dates that drafting was commenced and completed and submitted to the department head for approval in final form. And I didn't receive that information. So maybe our foiling process isn't good, and maybe we need to look at it again. Yes. No, can we have a conversation about that? Because, I mean, as a member of the public, you're required, you submit a FOIL, you have to get the information that's requested. I would think as a member of the town board, the fact that I had to resort to this was absurd, and that you didn't answer that question. Unless I'm missing it in here. I mean, I did receive some copies of emails. It shows who Mr. Mueller sent these to, and I'm definitely not on the list. That's okay. But I don't see the information in there that specifically asks when it was drafted, when it was commenced, completed, and submitted to the department head for approval in final form, and also what was the criteria used for distribution of copies of the aforementioned amendment to members of the town board. It didn't include that information. So my issue is, if you're not willing to appropriately respond to a FOIL request from the town board, what faith do I have that in this scenario you're properly answering the FOIL request? I can give it to you right here.
May I ask you, did you get a response to that request?
Yeah, my response is right here. No, the total package is right here. Maybe it's going to be supplemented. I think there's another, I don't know, we'll week or two that.
What was did you get a response to your request for those particular documents that you asked?
No. I just received other documents.
I will look at.
So maybe this highlights an addition.
Maybe you got a partial response to your FOIL as to what was available, and they're still working on it. I will check it.
It doesn't say that, though.
Well,
All right,
I will check it.
All right, Mr. McCabe, anything else?
I do something real quick. It just popped into my head now. Mr. Blakeman and Mrs. King Sweeney had expressed some concerns how they were not given some of the information in regards to the free air case, restaurants, windows, some things going on at the animal shelter. There was a conversation between my father and Mr. Ambrosino at a Floral Park Civic Association meeting, and we had asked him about this. And, it was before any of the litigation had come about or anything like that, and we had said to him if there's anything that he can do to help us, if there's anything he can do, and he met with us, and somewhat reluctantly, but we've gotten past it. After the law was passed, we had seen him again at a civic meeting and asked him how come he voted the way he did, how come the board voted the way they did. And Mr. Ambrosino, you said to us, your hands were tied. It was really important to the supervisor. Can you expand on that a little bit for us in this open venue?
Mr. Tantra.
The short answer there, this is not question and answer. Certainly, the councilman has every right to answer or not answer as he sees fit. But this is not question and answer. This is comment.
Let's hear it, Eddie.
Well, you can ask me questions, and I have received the same response, and for the life of me, I still don't understand what this free air law thing is all about. And as you know, the first vote I made was a mistake, openly, and I did the wrong thing. Second time around, I tried to correct it to no avail. But I still can't figure it out.
So you were told that this was both very important to the supervisor and that you might say that your hands were tied?
Yes, and at the same meeting, I said, can we please meet with the supervisor? No, and I said, you need to tell me, is that the policy going forward, that the supervisor will not meet with the town board? Yes.
Mr. Town Attorney, with respect to an advisory commission on pending litigation.
Eddie?
Let him speak, please.
There's pending litigation in this matter,
Not bullshit.
and I advise the members of the board not to come.
Roy Gunter, that's pending litigation.
Thank you.
Eddie, you could have spoke.
Laura Dillon.
Laura Dillon, Rockville Center, New York, candidate for town supervisor. I think we can agree, Mr. Santino, that your office, your controller provided financial data to the state controller. Is that correct, Mr. Santino? Do we agree on that?
Mr. Conway, if you would come forward.
I just understand it's a simple question.
So what we're talking about. Conway, what do we do to state control?
On April 30, 2017, we filed AUD, which is a required financial document, to the state controller, as we have in the past, and we filed it timely.
And do you have any reason to believe that the information you provided to the state controller is inaccurate?
Absolutely not.
And do you have any reason to believe that the state controller's office somehow manipulated the data that you provided them?
I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. I will add that the state controller, representatives from the state controller did reach out to my office making inquiry on certain issues, and they were satisfied with the response, which is a normal practice.
And do you deny that the state controller reflects that that expenditures exceeded revenues to the tune of roughly $52 million?
I don't deny that, but I will point out that the state controller's configuration is a chart of accounts, and it would be disingenuous to look at that. What is the driving force in that, as I mentioned to Mr. Akachi earlier, is that there was a budget note of $30 million that was picked up as a liability on that statement, thereby an expense adding to that. But the proceeds from said borrowing was not added as a revenue item.
And the budget note was as a result of a lawsuit that was pending for how many years?
About 25 years.
Okay.
So do you deny that there was a $52 million deficit?
I absolutely deny that. We closed the books with a $6 million deficit, as I explained, three tentacles of that, one being an operational surplus of approximately $5 million. The other two items, if I may, the other two items were write-offs, one being, as the supervisor just pointed out, a garbage tax issue that dates back again 25 years, where we got a judgment of $25 million. We settled the judgment at $18 million, approximately $7 million write-off, which is a hit to our financials, and a highway department inventory write-off of approximately $4 million. So you take those two, that's an $11 million deficit. We closed the books with a $6 million deficit, which means that operationally, when you look at our operations, 2016, just the operations, not the aberrations I just mentioned, we had an operational surplus of $5 million, and I stand behind it.
Mr. Supervisor, may I just interject? This is not question and answer, this is public comment.
Oh, please.
Well, Mr. Conrad, I have a question, please. So of the $25 million that was anticipated with respect to the judgment with the County of Nassau, was that listed as a revenue item?
That was listed as a revenue item and a receivable, which meant that...
How many? Okay, I'm sorry.
Let him answer the question.
Which meant that that was an attribute to the surplus. Now, when we forgave $7 million of it, that's a detriment to the surplus, and we had to immediately, at the point that we forgave the $7 million, pick that up as a adverse deficit, if you would.
So, Mr. Conrad, how many years did we carry that $25 million revenue item as that $25 million judgment as a revenue item?
That judgment came down from Judge Morano, I believe July of 15, so it was about 2 years. That's subject to check.
Okay, so we carried it as a revenue item for 2 years, and then it was settled for less than what was included as the revenue item.
We picked it up as a revenue item in the year that the judgment was issued, It got closed into the surplus. Then when we forgave $7 million, that reversed that surplus.
So basically what you said is that we're anticipating a $50 million surplus this year?
No, I did not say that.
Then where did the, you said there was $100 million in reserves?
Fund balance, correct.
Okay.
As of 12/31.
And $50 million of it was cash, right?
50 million, you said? It's known as, yes, 50 million is unrestricted, that's cash.
Okay, so that's cash. So basically we have a $50 million fund.
Unrestricted fund balance, close of business 16. Correct.
And we're not going to use any of that $50 million to defray expenses in the proposed budget, correct?
Correct. As it is anticipated now, this budget will be a functionally balanced budget, no use of fund balance, and we're looking to restore fund balance.
As the 2017 budget did those exact same things.
So none of that $50 million is going to be given back to the taxpayers in the form of a tax cut?
I think it's premature at this point. I will say that Wall Street, if I may, the town is heavy with regard to the infrastructure costs. We are heavily into the marketplace. The town spends 12 to 13 cents of every dollar on debt service, which would be principal and interest. It is in the town's best interest, and this has been confirmed by Wall Street, by Moody's, by S&P and all, to build your fund balance. By building your fund balance, you are in effect reducing your debt service costs. So we will do everything we can to restore that fund balance, and to the betterment of the taxpayer, reduce our operational costs as it relates to debt service. Again, it is 12 cents on every dollar.
Okay, look, I know what you're trying to do here. This is Ms. Gillen's time. Ms. Gillen, yeah, it's practically obvious. Ms. Gillen, please go ahead. Ms. Gillen, go ahead. Ms. Gillen, would you please go ahead? Ms. Gillen, this is your time. We're going to run the clock. Ms. Gillen, we're not going to engage in this. You have something to say. I want to hear it. Please make a comment. If you have a question, the town controller will answer it.
First of all, I would say that clearly this discussion is very useful. And it's discussions that should have been happening all year long, and apparently aren't even happening looking forward to 2018 budget. Certainly, if I'm the supervisor of the town of Hempstead, these discussions will happen with all of you all the time, and including the controller, because you need to know what's happening with our budget. You should not be operating in the dark and be presented a budget where there's been no discussion amongst the town board. I think that what you said, Mr. Conroy, is you closed 2016 with a $6 million deficit. So that makes this statement in mailers sent across the town and handed out at train stations that there's a $5 million surplus misleading.
Absolutely not. I totally take umbrage with that. I take exception to that. There is a very clear, you may not understand it, but there's a very clear difference. There is a very clear difference between an operational surplus in a given year as opposed to when there are various lawsuits that are pending for 25 years and you settle them and you have to take your write-off and you have to show it somewhere, so you have to show it somewhere on your budget. But the budget, when I became supervisor on January 1st, 2016, had a certain amount of spending in it and a certain amount of revenue in it. One of the revenue items was a drawdown on fund balance of $23 million. Because of the cost savings that I implemented, not only did we not draw down that $23 million, we actually added $5 million to the operational surplus for 2016. In 2017, we had a structurally balanced budget that we anticipate will add, when the books are closed out, that will add to surplus, that it anticipated in the budget would add to surplus, and the budget that I intend to propose very shortly to this board will also be structurally balanced and will add to fund balance. Is anything I said there not correct, Mr. Comptroller?
Supervisor, absolutely on the mark. I concur wholeheartedly.
So I do know that in your 2017 budget, you said it was the first structurally sound budget in decades.
Structurally balanced, there's a difference, structurally balanced.
That's what I said, I thought. Well, you said in your report that it's the first structurally balanced budget in decades. I know that you've been sitting on this board since 1993 and therefore voted in favor of every budget that was not structurally sound. I also said that I knew very well what you were doing, Mr. Santino, and it's my time. I respected your comments, and you will respect mine as well. I'm very aware of what you're doing. You're using nomenclature to try to mislead the public about a deficit that exists in 2016. And I also note, please, town board members, there's a press release on the town website that talks about upgrades in the town's bond outlook. I think to tout an upgrading outlook could be misleading, first of all, because usually upgrades refer to bond ratings, not outlooks. That in and of itself could be misleading. Second of all, to tout an upgraded outlook, well, omitting the fact that the town bond rating has been downgraded 3 times by Moody's is materially misleading. And as we know, if you read the Wall Street Journal, the SEC has become very interested in taking action against municipalities that are not making accurate disclosures about their financial status. So I would urge you to reconsider that press release and have an investigation, perhaps sanctions by the SEC for misleading the investment community and the public at large.
Are you done, Ms. Gill?
I'm done.
Thank you very much. Dominica Califano?
I'm envious.
Hello, Dominica Califano, 4043 Long Beach Road, Island Park, New York. You were talking about the outflow pipe that was earlier. It's very concerning and upsetting. I am in the waters in Island Park. You had Robert Walker talk about this outflow pipe that's under federal investigation at Operation VIP/in Freeport. I'm not sure how they have this gentleman that's under federal investigation for his corruption talk about this pipe that's been wrong for many, many years. The other thing was Anthony D'Exposito and Councilor Santino, you were by the Long Beach Motor Inn in Island Park. Anthony D'Exposito, you never ever speak about anything. How dare you go by a hotel that is single parent mothers with kids there just to get votes? Won't we break the chain of corruption? What you have done in Island Park is horrendous. The bullying, harassment, the disgusting speaking of people, and what has been done. And I'm still being bullied by your little friends from the building department harassing me on my building. It is horrendous what they have been doing. Their laws, who they pick and choose. What happened to Council? Where did Santino go? You didn't want to hear about it? No? This is how we speak? This is how you just walk off when someone's speaking, that he's well aware of what's going on? It's horrible here. I thought that was horrible just to get votes. All of a sudden they come out. D'Exposito never speaks about anything, but he left his detective job to become a councilman to double dip his salary. So it's another puppet that we're having to follow in Santino's footsteps. Stop the harassment, stop the bullying. Stop using your powers of every town of Hempstead.
Mrs. Califano, just to be very clear, I did not, I took a leave of absence from the New York City Police Department and I did not get paid. So thank you very much.
You finally spoke, you have a voice. I love it. You finally spoke because you're a puppet that they think is gonna follow through for the corruption. From the Island Park, this is the same way the Village of Island Park meetings run. Now I understand where it's all going. They brought it into the building department, that they're harassing on a certificate of occupancy on my building from 1954. I wasn't even born. We got a full certificate of occupancy on my building in 1974. I spoke out and I came to Newsday at a county meeting about a $14.5 million Operation VIP Splash contract that Santino signed off on his buddies to be working on our wetlands that were destroyed. They had no rights to be there. On the 8th of June, they sent Anthony D'Esposito's friends to my building to remove my building permit, my CO of my building. That there was nothing wrong with, but I've been in court for the last 2.5 years. Playing game. The bullying in the town of Hempstead needs to stop. It's not pick and choose and favorite friends. It's a disgrace. How do you sleep with yourself and you go to church on Sundays?
Okay, thank you. I have one more person who's speaking, and that's Mr. Stanley Amato.
No wonder he left. Yeah, we had to go behind the curtain.
Yeah, give him the orders, Joe.
How are you?
Independent councilman, huh?
The mic is off, I
I
think.
had something for the supervisor, but I have a loud voice, so I don't need the mic. I hope he comes back because...
No, he isn't. He has an appointment that he has to.
Oh, Jesus, he has an appointment. I should have
Yes.
figured that.
On the day of a town board
Well,
meeting.
I'll bring up what I had to say about him anyway.
But aren't you suing us, sir? This is a lawsuit that you have against us?
Yes, I do.
Well,
My attorney advised me I could speak at the meeting, and that's
Well,
why I my lawsuit.
You can speak. I will caution members of the board not to respond.
How about Roy
So,
Gunther?
I'm not pointing me up here, but the people can hear what I have to say. I was interested in what was going on with my cats, obviously. I know that being fed and got water, blankets, and plenty of cat litter, I'm sure of that. Earlier, the supervisor did say that, I thought it was a great idea having meetings at night, in addition to what you already have. It's very unfair for people like myself, others at work, to have a change of venue and bring other people in. But he turned that down. But there's a comment he did make. He said that, we had to change everything around, and he would be bringing in people at night, and you'd have to pay overtime and things of that nature. Well, that's a lie. He doesn't pay overtime. He boasted in his contracts and everywhere else where he's completely cut out overtime. I worked for the system for 29 years, so I'm well aware of the way it works. He doesn't pay overtime. He now just changes shifts around. So he needs to be corrected on that. Either he was just misleading himself or lying. I have another question about signs for the building department, but Mr. Blakely, for the last week and a half, I've tried to contact your office, and I have. I asked him to give you a message. I needed to speak to you personally. Mr. Blakely and I go back some 50 years. We lived together in Valley Stream. It's personal. And I did give it to his office.
Which office did you?
I called here. Specifically called here.
I don't recall getting
And
that.
I knew you didn't. That's the answer I figured I would get. Now let me tell you what they explained to me. I called and said it was personal. They said they would get back to me. And they did the next day. They said, is it a building issue? I said, no. This is my name, my phone number, where I live, and I even went into a little detail that you and I had some relationship or friendship over many years.
We were fraternity brothers.
Exactly. I know his family. We grew up together in Valley Stream. I know him since he's 12 years old. I pledged him in my fraternity. But besides that, I said it's personal. Give him my phone number. You have my address. There's nothing hidden here. Nothing that's behind closed doors. I got nowhere. I called again. They said they were going to give it to the town attorney. Which I said, well, so you're just throwing it out. So I believe they must have my picture with an X to it. Because I have one of Santino.
I will check it out.
And I let it go to this meeting.
And by the way, there's something that could have slipped through the cracks on my part. I'll check it out. But more importantly, I'll see you after the meeting. I'll give you my cell phone.
I guarantee you nothing slipped through the cracks because I'm not, I don't let that happen. I was loud and clear as to exactly what I wanted to have done. Then I had a problem with signage. So I called that fake hotline. They also have my picture with a line through it. And they spoke like they knew what they were talking about. There was 3 conversations. I am a taxpayer. I sat on a board in the village of East Rockaway. I know the law. I know how things work. Never got a return. Never got a follow-up letter. of anything. My argument was signage, political signage, in a residential area on a private home. I know the law. You cannot hang 3 by 8 foot signs all around the exterior of your property. Bad enough, all the political signs that are hanging out in our neighborhoods now to trash up every neighborhood, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's off the chart what they have done this year. I did this business for 38 years. I have never seen anything like it in the way I have now. Every abandoned parking lot, new building, and everything up has political signs, Republican signs, from end to end. They don't mind trashing up every neighborhood in the town of Hempstead. It's disgraceful, and it's not necessary. I asked the building department to get back to me. Where's my letter? 3 phone calls. The commissioner, his office, his secretaries. I know you cannot hang political signs 3 feet by 8 feet long on your fence in a private residential neighborhood. No one got back to me, nothing was done about it. And P.S., the person that has those signs, I'm not going to mention who it is, but is connected to the town of Hempstead. Because like every other building and piece of commercial property, you'd be trashing up every neighborhood in the town of Hempstead. I work for the village. You can't do it. But they tried to tell me, yeah, well, we know law. You don't know the law. I know law. You can't, that's not to be done. But they never returned any calls, never got back. And again, they got that picture of me hanging up. So, Mr. Blakeman, that's the story. I'm sorry that, I said I'd come here to make a point, and that's exactly what I did. And I'm not done.
Okay, thank you very much.